Okay, we're going to start this right now because anyone that has seen Paul before knows that he has a tendency to go on, which is to great benefit to everybody here. It's my privilege to introduce the next speaker. Paul Chek is somebody that I've known for the last 6 years, and he has had a profound impact on my personal and professional life. The things that he's going to talk about today, for some of you, they might be a little extreme. They might seem a little out there, but I'll tell you what, anyone that's interested in achieving high performance, whether it's with athletes or regular clientele, from someone who works with and has worked with hundreds and hundreds of professional athletes, as soon as you figure this stuff out, then you're going to be on the right road. And a lot of these topics are not as exciting, as sexy as some of the other things you might hear over the weekend, but it's the dirt facts, it's the truth. Listen up, pay very close attention, and without any further ado, it's my honor to introduce Paul Chek.
Thank you. It's fantastic to be here. It was an honor to be offered to come to the best of the best. That's quite a statement in itself. So anytime you can make it to the best list, that's cool. All right. Since I got kicked out of school, I had to do well somewhere else. So as you can see with the title, it's Nutrition, the Dirt Facts, getting right down to the absolute basics. What do we have to do to make everything else work? That's what I want to talk about today. So our learning objectives in this 90 minutes that will go by very fast, and you will probably think that I'm speaking at about 750 words a minute, but I doubt I can outperform Robert Rakowski. I will try. We want to look at what is called the wheel of life and recognize the vital relationship between soil health and nutrition. So soil, in other words, the nutrition in the soil and the health of plants, animals, and man. We want to learn to feed people correctly and avoid unnecessary industry-driven hype or the application of this for that nutritional supplemental approaches. I'm not saying that I don't think there's a place for that, but I'm saying what you'll see if you look around is that the nutritional industry is now pretty much owned by the drug industry, and the whole nutritional concept is now just, by prescription. If your butt itches, I got a pill for you. If your hair's falling out, I got a pill for you. It's not really looking at causes. It's just this for that, which is exactly how the drug system works, how allopathic medicine works. We want to see natural eating and organic food or nutrition as an essential element in high-performance programming, and it may actually be essential for the survival of man as a race, as I will show you. I know that's a pretty heavy-duty statement, but I have facts and things to back it up, so hang around. So the typical client that I see, a Chek client, which is Corrective Holistic Exercise Kinesiology, that's my last name, but that's the acronym I use for my institute. Among many other things, I use a very comprehensive questionnaire that takes people usually 3 to 4 hours to fill out, and it's weighted, and it indicates to me which of their organ systems and hormonal systems and even psychological components are under stress. There's 29 systems that I look at here, and based on that and many other forms of analysis, whether it be blood tests, hormonal tests, salivary tests, cortisol rhythm tests, whatever I feel is necessary, I have to make decisions about how I'm going to address my client. I do not ever design exercise programs without a complete analysis of the emotional, mental, spiritual, and nutritional components. My first visit usually takes 10 to 16 hours with a client. That's spread typically over a few days. This is the only way I'll see people, because after 22 years of hard work, I can tell you, for me, in my opinion, that's the only way I can get the results that I want. And part of it has to do with the fact that the people that come to see me have pretty serious problems, and they've tried most conventional approaches. Here's a typical client that I see. This girl was a power lifter. She had been training very hard and gaining weight, which is, I've seen many, many cases like this, going to the gym regularly, and the bigger she got, the harder she worked, and the harder she worked, the bigger she got. She was so frustrated. She'd seen many doctors, many therapists, and got no better. And I offered to help her, and she was elated at that. I literally wrote her program for her on a piece of paper. She's a massage therapist that I see in New Zealand, so when I finish lifting weights a couple times a week, she takes care of me. And I rarely ever do this for people because in my experience, whenever you give people something for free, they don't have any investment in it. But I could sense this woman had a deep soul need for help. She really, truly wanted to get help, had made many efforts, didn't get it. So I thought, I'm going to help her this time, and we'll see what happens. So I wrote her entire program for her on one piece of paper and said, if you do exactly that, it will change your life. And at the end of the lecture, I will show you what she looked like 1 year later. This is a summarized and tightened up questionnaire that's in my book, How to Eat, Move, and Be Healthy. And that system is also weighted, and it allows you to identify how much stress any of your clients is under or you're under prior to designing any kind of an exercise program. And I also give you energy balancing exercises in the book so that you can use exercises to stimulate the parasympathetic nervous system and the right neurovascular and hormonal systems to balance the body out. So you can see that, and it works very effectively. And when people call me for an appointment, I ask them, have you used my book, How to Eat, Move, and Be Healthy, for a minimum of 4 to 6 months? And if they say no, I say, listen, you shouldn't come see me because all you're going to do is pay me $500 an hour and I'm just going to read my book to you. So if that's what if you like stories, I'll tell you a few, okay? Because I like money. I have lots of uses for it. So here we are today, and a very brief summary of our stats. Now, I could have given you hours of statistics, so I just brought what I thought would be a kind of a drill-at-home point to begin this whole thing. In 1900, the risk of cancer was 1 person in 30. In 1980, it was 1 in 5. By 1990, it was 1 in 4. By 1995, it was 1 in 3. By the year 2000, the risk of cancer is 1 in every 2 people, and it's getting worse. That means if you look around the room right now, half of you will die of cancer, according to solid statistics. If that doesn't concern you, I guess nothing will. Now, as you know, being fit and having muscle or being low on body fat is not really a reliable indicator of how long you're going to live, and fitness and health are not synonymous. And I've got walls covered with pictures of famous athletes to prove it, and all their assessments and hormonal evaluations to prove it as well. It's amazing to me that we have the most complex medical system in the world. We have more doctors, therapists, nutritionists, dietitians, more medical and exercise people per capita than not only any country in the world, but than at any time in history. And today, it might interest you to know that we are spending approximately $14 million a minute on healthcare in the United States alone. Now, Canada's one of the better countries, but it's still not too far behind us. England and Australia are fast chasing our tail. England outdoes us in some categories. Interestingly enough, we spend $14 million a minute on healthcare, and our health rankings range between 11th and 37th in almost every statistical category. So we're not doing very well. I don't know if any of you saw this New York Times report that recently there was an outbreak of heart disease epidemic linked to red meat consumption in African lions. Did any of you see that one? And they've also found escalating rates of breast cancer as an epidemic amongst female chimpanzees. Here you can see GlaxoSmithKline is now the largest drug company in the world, is now thinking of figuring out how to get statin drugs into the lions. And over here, Gerber has offered to alleviate the burden on chimp mothers by offering a new freedom formula designed to allow mothers more time to please their men. Did any of you see that report? Yeah? Have you ever thought of why you've never seen a report like that on TV? Because they don't exist. That's a BS report. I made that up to make a point. You've never seen anything like that on television. You've never read it on the paper. You've never heard it on the news. And as long as man stays the hell out of nature with his damn supplements and muscle and fitness crap, the animals have a fighting chance. But everywhere we go with our so-called rocket science, we create disease. I'll be scared to death when I see a report like that on television. What we need to look at is what's called the closed organic cycle. It's also referred to in older health books as the wheel of life. It shows you here that humus and microorganisms are the foundation of life. Okay? The soil is the base from which the plants get their nutrition and all these other things I'm about to show you. Animals live off of plants. The animals can only be as healthy as the plants, and man eats animals and plants. So you have a closed cycle. Everything in nature dies and goes back into the soil. If a lion dies, it lays down on the ground, and the only thing that eats it is a buzzard or the decomposers, so the microorganisms in the soil. The top of the carnivorous pile just basically goes back into the soil and feeds the little guys. So there's a very, very tight, carefully regulated, fully supported cycle. Walter Russell refers to it as the love principle. In nature, the microorganism gives its life in service of the grass. The grass gives its life in service of the zebra. The zebra gives its life in service to the lion, and the lion gives its life in service to the microorganism, so the life cycle completes itself. And what Walter Russell refers to as the love principle is that each lives a life of fullness, but it usually ends in the mouth of another creature, and that is a complete life cycle, and that is how nature is designed. So I like Einstein. He's one of my heroes. I've studied him extensively. So I've used pictures of him in here, and the first chapter of my book is called If Einstein Were Your Doctor, and it's all about how he would handle typical health solutions using his, general theory of everything is connected to everything, and that's something I think is important. So Einstein's saying here, the soils are the foundation, literally the ground substance of all that lives. Do you think we can really know and appreciate or practice effective nutrition without knowledge of how to manage the soil and how the soil functions? I would like you to ask yourself that question right now. Can we really practice nutrition without understanding the soil? Okay, keep that in mind through the lecture. And it might interest you to know that I've never found a university in the world that teaches anything to do with soil science whatsoever, no matter what level of degree you get. So let's take a look, and you can see for yourself. Now, it might interest you to know, if you've ever read the Bible, you've all heard of Adam and Eve, I take it. Does anybody know what the word Adam means in Greek or Arabic? Well, I'll help you. Adam, in Greek, means creature of the earth, of earthly slime. In Arabic, creature of red earth. Adam, a man of the soil. Humus, the word humus is the derivative from which the word human came. Humus is organic matter that's been processed by soil microorganisms, and the word human is a derivative of humus. Adam means of earthly slime or of red earth, and humus is human. Okay? So as far back as you can go, even in sacred texts, you will find many reliable references to the fact that man's physical being, physical body, emanates out of the soil. We literally are the biological and physical extension of all our genetic and biological predecessors. Our great-grandparents are viruses, fungi, and bacteria. If you follow the genetic chain backwards, historically, you get to those three creatures, and they are not only there to help us, but they are Mother Nature's garbage collectors. So whenever we're making mistakes, as I'll show you, they're there to rectify the mistakes for Mother Nature. I'll show you what Eve means later. I haven't forgot. But I have a special diagram so you can get to know Eve. Okay? She's hot. Do you know what Adam said to Eve the first time they were about to have sex? He said, "Stand back. I don't know how big it gets." Kind of scary. Okay. I'm glad I found out before I met my first girl. Okay, the topsoil is the Earth's digestive system. Okay? I'm going to show you now how the Earth's digestive system processes and metabolizes nutrition in the soil. And what I'm going to show you is that whatever you do to the Earth's digestive system, you automatically do to yours. There's no way around it. Okay? So I'm going to take you through two phases of Earth digestion. The first phase is called superficial. The second phase is called deep digestion. And I'll also show you what our modern farming technologies are doing to the Earth's digestive processes. First, it's important for you to know that in all serious farming operations, organic and biodynamic, the production of humus or compost is absolutely an essential, a pivotal point upon which the entire farm operates. So in any real farm, you will see composting being done constantly, because that is what controls the nutrition in the soil, and that is what is essential to feed the plants and keep the nutrient values up and feed the microorganisms. And this is mixed in with fertilizer, and I'll show you how it all works in a minute. It's also very important for you to realize just what's in healthy soil. 1 gram, which is about the weight of an American penny. So 1 gram of soil, or a half a sewing thimble, you know the little thimble you can put over your finger in sewing? Half a thimble is about 1 gram of soil. Has some 600 million microorganisms of tens of thousands of different species of bacteria, of fungi. So there's about 600 million microorganisms and some 10,000 species of bacteria and fungi. Our ancestors are prevalent in healthy soil, and they're down there doing a tremendous amount of work for us, as I will show you. Here's a quote from a famous British farmer who is on record for having numerous awards in farming, breeding racehorses, and was cited by the UK government for producing the most nutritious milk of all the farmers in the UK, and was investigated by the government when the quality of the milk in the UK started dropping down so low it became a national risk. And they found that out when they had almost 50% of the soldiers reporting for duty in the Second World War had to be turned away due to malnutrition. So when they found this guy's milk at such a high quality, they investigated and found out that he was using organic farming principles. He's written several books on farming. One of the comments he makes in here is absolutely essential to keep in mind. Soil organisms are the unpaid labor force of the farm, working constantly to break down not only the organic matter present in the soil, but also its complex minerals, so making them available to plants. So what he's showing you here is that the microorganisms in the soil are the absolute essential workforce, and they take what you would know of as soil minerals or rock, and they convert them in their bodies, liquefy them, and make them bioavailable to plants. Most people actually think plants eat dirt. Plants don't eat dirt any more than you do, and plants don't eat poop any more than you do. Okay? The soil microorganisms are the ones that like the poop, and the soil microorganisms are the ones that perform all the alchemical functions to convert nutrition out of rock and soil into food that can be fed to plants. Here's a who eats who board of microorganisms. So there's symbiotic microorganisms in here. These are special mycorrhiza fungi, which I'll show you. And then there's a whole host of different organisms that eat each other. What's going on in the soil, if you could just shrink yourself down, I guarantee you, if you could shrink yourself down and they had TV, it would be just like watching, Terminator or something. It would be just like that. There'd be people getting killed, stuff getting blown up, bugs on vacation, bugs having sex. It would be wild as hell down there. Okay? And that's the who screws who eats who board. Okay? And that's important because a lot of people, for example, won't eat meat because they think, I want to be spiritual and I don't want to harm animals. But what they don't realize is that the plants are being fed by the microorganisms that support that particular type of plant. And one of the first things that happens is the friendly symbiotic microorganisms for any plant eat the enemy and feed it to the plant. It's been shown by hard, cold research that plants are carnivorous as hell. Okay? You might want to know that. So if you're a vegetarian, you're just eating little animals. They're just being fed to you in a liquid form. I don't mind. I just want people to be educated. I wrote 2 very comprehensive articles about vegetarianism in my Czech report. So if you're interested, you can contact the Institute and find out about that. But I addressed all the dogma and completely obliterated a lot of the common stuff with fact and knowledge. So let's have a quick look here. Here are some of the microorganisms in the soil. That's a fungal-feeding nematode. A nematode's a worm. This little worm feeds on the fungi. Fungi are super high in vitamins, super high in protein. So when this guy eats the fungi, not only does he poop out nutrition for the plants that the roots can suck up, but when he dies, he leaves his carcass behind, and the plant roots can suck that up, and the other microorganisms eat him. Okay? So he's a key player. Here's a protozoa. There's just billions of these things down there, and they eat other little protozoa, and they eat other things that are smaller than them, other viral and bacterial and fungal organisms. Here's a predatory nematode. This is a worm that hunts other worms, right? This one feeds on fungus, and this one feeds on that one, okay? I told you, it's really badass down there. There's a lot of serious stuff going on. You don't want to shrink yourself down without at least an M16. Okay? And then below it all are bacteria. And there's just gazillions of bacteria of all different types. But the balance of the bacteria in the soil has a lot to do with how the farmers manage the soil. And just like you have to have about 85% friendly bacteria to 15% unfriendly bacteria in your gut, if you don't have that ratio, you start producing all kinds of toxins. It starts to poison your body. Your bowel movements become irregular. And I could sit here and list about 20 other things that will happen, other than the fact that it'll be very dangerous to walk in the toilet behind you. But the same thing's going on in the soil, exactly. Okay? And what's going on in human beings' intestinal tracts right now matches what's going on in the soil. So what are some of the things that humus, these microorganisms in the organic matter, do for us? Well, humus is, like, for example, when plants die in the winter time, in the fall, when the fruit falls on the ground that doesn't get eaten, when an animal dies, when a bird poops as it's flying by. Hope it doesn't get you. I've got hit in the head twice. Supposed to be good luck. Of course, I had hair before that. Okay, so I don't know if it was good luck, but they say grass doesn't grow on a busy street. So humus has a crumb-like structure. So when the microorganisms eat up the dead leaves and the dead grass and the dead stuff, it produces a crumb-like structure. Like if you take a graham cracker and break it up, that's a crumb-like structure. That allows air, oxygen, to pass through the soil to allow oxygenation of the soil so the aerobic functions in the soil can happen. Just like you have to have aerobic metabolism, so does the soil microorganisms. There's millions of aerobic metabolic functions going on in the soil, but if the soil becomes too packed because there's not enough organic matter, you get soil erosion and water wastage because the water runs off like crazy. It might interest you to know that 1 square foot of humus can hold 7 gallons of water. This stops soil erosion and helps regulate soil temperature, because holding on to water is what helps regulate soil temperature, so that the soil temperature maintains a fairly constant level. Otherwise, organisms in the soil will die, and if the soil gets too cold in the wintertime, then the root structures freeze and all the plants die. Okay? So we have temperature regulation. By the way, the crumb structure, this is interesting. Research shows that when the microorganisms metabolize the humus and create the crumb structure in the humus, each little piece of soil acts like an electromagnetic antenna. So just like you got the little round dishes on your hotels and your houses to suck in the satellite signals, the microorganisms create billions of little miniature satellite dishes that sucks in cosmic energy from the sun, from the moon, from the stars. And I'll show you later how that charges up the soil, and I'll show you how plants are actually electronically driven, just like human cells. It provides much of a plant's immune system. These guys actually protect the plant, and they all have favorite plants, and they protect those plants, and they fight and kill each other, and they feed the enemies to the plant. Okay? They feed on predators. Here is a predatory nematode. This is what's called this is a parasite nematode, so a parasite worm. And this one is, I believe, an eelworm that's trying to attack a cabbage plant. This comes from a book written by Lady Eve Balfour, who's the founder of organic farming as we know it. And this was published in 1942. It's called The Living Soil, this book. And she shows here, these are fungi, what are called symbiotic fungi, that actually share a working relationship with the roots of plants, and they create loops out of their bodies, and they excrete very powerful adhesives. And when the worm wiggles his way through, the adhesive sticks to his body, and then the fungi excretes very powerful acids. By the way, the fungi excrete acids so powerful they dissolve rock, and one of the things they do for the plants is they dissolve the rocks and they feed it to the plants in trade for drinking some of the plant sap, which is primarily carbohydrate, because they're carbohydrate lovers. So they swap sugar for minerals, okay, and for protein, because look here. See, there's his digestive tract and his nervous system. See that? But look down here. See all the filaments in there? That's the mycorrhiza. Those are the filaments of the fungus. It eats the predator from the inside out and feeds the organs and the nervous system first to the plant. Okay? So, like I told you, these suckers, these plants, they love steak. Now here you can see a photograph of the inside of a plant root, and these little hair-like structures are what are called hyphae, and that's the actual filaments of the fungus in the soil. 85% of all edible plants have a symbiotic relationship with fungi. So they're called mycorrhiza formers. Myco just means fungus, rhiza means filament. So 85% of the 350,000 plants that human beings can eat have this relationship. And look what they do. They suck nutrition up out of the soil and they store it in these little nodules right here. And that's how healthy plants make it through alterations in weathers. We get hot, dry spells, if we go without water for long periods of time, these organisms actually create little storage banks of nutrition for the plants in there. They have a very, very elaborate system they've developed over billions of years of evolution. Interestingly enough, here I am at a biodynamic farm, and my buddy Robert Farmer, who's a biodynamic farmer, was showing me the nodules. There you can actually see the nodules on the roots, okay? And when you split one open, it actually looks like blood inside. It's amazing. You can see the little picture right there. We split one of the mycorrhiza formers, nodules, open, and inside it looks just like human blood. And all that is nutrition in reserve for the plant to make sure it has the optimum, listen carefully, to make sure the plant has optimum opportunity to express its genetics and suppress its genetic weaknesses. Sound interesting, eh? Just like human beings. You don't eat right, you express your genetic weaknesses. You eat right, you express your strengths and suppress your weaknesses. Plants do the same thing. Eat sick plants, hey. Eat sick animals, there's not a vitamin in the world that'll help you. Microorganisms also liquefy minerals and convert non-organic compounds into organic compounds for the plants. These microorganisms produce amino acids, organic acids, and organometallic acids for the plants. 40 to 80% of the bacteria in a plant's rhizosphere, which means the sphere of its roots. Okay? A corn plant has about 20 to 26,000 miles of roots. One corn plant. Most people don't know that. Okay? Strung end to end, the root structure of one corn plant would go around the world. And that's called the rhizosphere. It's sphere of where it attracts things into the soil and the sphere in which it has a relationship with microorganisms. 40 to 80% of the bacteria in a plant's rhizosphere produce vitamins. Soil microbes produce numerous vitamins. Everything you can find in a human body, by the way, is found within the rhizosphere of plants. Whatever enzymes, whatever vitamins, any nutritional factor that a doctor can find in you, I can show you soil research and agricultural research to prove to you that that same stuff exists right in the soil. And whatever's missing in you is probably what's missing in your diet. There's other factors involved, but in general, you see that for a fact. Okay? The soil bacteria and microorganisms produce numerous enzymes. They produce steroids and many other hormones, by the way. They produce anabolic steroids. They produce catabolic steroids. It's serious stuff down there. Okay? Whatever's going on. Remember what I said when I got that award this morning? As above, so below. I meant it. Okay? In 1928, Demedenko showed that the plants will excrete 27% of their whole body mass back into the soil in nutrition. So what that means, if a plant If you take a plant and pull it out of the ground and the plant weighs 10 pounds, in its lifetime it will inject 27% of its body weight back into the soil as vitamins, minerals, fats, carbohydrates, proteins, and enzymes. And guess why it's putting that stuff back into the soil? Why do you think it's doing that? It's feeding the microorganisms. There's a working relationship. The microorganisms break the soil down and feed it to the plants. And then when microorganisms need things, the plant sends things back down to it. They each have the capacity to produce things the other one can't produce. So they have a working, symbiotic, like a yin-yang relationship. And interestingly enough, if you just let nature do its thing, what you guys call weeds, wherever weeds grow, those are the exact plants that will produce the vitamins, minerals, and enzymes to rebalance the soil. So what do with our genius? We come along and spray Roundup all over the place, kill all the weeds, and keep the soil completely out of balance and dead, and we can't figure out why we're tired and sick all the time. Right? But the whole system's beautifully balanced if we just get the hell out of the way. Okay? Some of you might be wondering, well, how come they don't teach this in universities? I'll tell you why. Almost every single agricultural program in the United States and in the world is sponsored by companies like DuPont and Monsanto. And whenever you teach this kind of stuff, they will remove your funding. As a matter of fact, if you do research into a man named William A. Albrecht, he produced over 800 papers on soil science full of this kind of information. He was ultimatum by the university. They said, if you don't stop teaching this stuff to our students, we have to fire you or you got to resign because our sponsors are going to pull our funding. So he said, well, screw them, I quit then. And there's many cases like that. I could sit here and give you a whole lecture just on that kind of stuff. Okay? That's why they say money is the root of all evil, okay? Too bad it's not rooted into health. Now we're going to talk about deep digestion. What we've been talking about so far is within the realm of the topsoil. The earthworms go down typically to the depth of the roots of the plants in that region. So earthworms might go a meter and a half down in the soil. Topsoil is usually, like a foot, maybe 18 inches in a healthy area. In a lot of places in the United States, topsoil's down to 1 or 2 inches because we're losing it. We'd lost 61% of our farmable topsoil by the year 1937. I'll say that again just so it sinks in. By the year 1937, we had so damaged our soils, we had lost 61% of our farmable topsoils in this country. You'd be shocked in the United States. You'd be shocked to know how much food is imported into Canada and the United States from other countries. And you'd also be shocked to know that the major chemical corporations practically force these third world countries to use chemicals that are banned here, and they ship them right back to your supermarket. Okay? So you're still eating DDT, Lindane, and all sorts of other crap. To save time, let me just tell you a few things about worms. They dig holes down, they aerate the soil, they eat things as they go, they eat grass, they eat anything they can put in their mouth, and when they poop it out the back end, it's caviar for plants. Okay? There's no organism in the world like an earthworm. They're extremely important. They're food for many animals. Their activity and their castings are widely used to increase crop yields and plant yields. They're a key natural element to improving and enriching soils, and on a good field, an organic field, an acre, so an acre is about 440, I think is maybe 3 or 4 football fields if I remember right. On 1 acre of soil that's left alone out in nature, earthworms produce 10 to 15 tons of castings a year. That's poops. Okay, that's castings and earthworm poop. They'll produce 10 to 15 tons of that stuff to feed the plants every year all by themselves if you leave them alone. Okay? Here's what Friend Sykes says about the earthworms. Friend Sykes informs us that these castings are a highly fertile mixture of soil minerals and plant food, and because of its solubility is immediately assimilable to the plants growing on the land. Here's a killer. It will therefore be seen that the earthworm is the most important cultivator on the whole farm. Its populations under all circumstances must be maintained, and no act of husbandry must be indulged which will reduce its numbers. Okay? Keep that in mind. Who can tell me what the name of the most commonly used fertilizer is out on farms these days? Anyone know? NPK fertilizer. It's a salt. What happens when you put a salt on a worm? You kill it. And they found that bird traffic is 40 to 60% reduced over any field where they've used chemical fertilizers. Why? Because it kills all the worms. There's nothing for the birds to eat. So if the birds don't have anything to eat, they have to migrate to other places, and that creates imbalances in nature. Here you see a researcher put some grass up on top of a pepper plant and left the grass up there, and then the earthworms within minutes came out of the soil and started eating the grass, and only 2 days later they had pulled all the grass. Now this isn't a little potted pepper plant. It's a little pepper plant, you know, about the pot's about 1 foot tall and 1 foot wide, right? And the earthworms came out of the soil and ate that whole patch of grass in 2 days. They sucked that right down into the soil, ate it, they'll be pooping it out, and that plant and that earthworm will be dancing together like it should be. Okay? So this is very, very important because the earthworm poops are food for all the microorganisms in there, and that little pepper plant will make someone a very nutritious little addition to a meal. Now, many people aren't aware of it, but the soil has a very, very important electromagnetic relationship with the plants. The sun produces bursts and huge amounts of photons, but the sun's so powerful it can do something that only the sun can do. It can split photons into electromagnetic packets that are diamagnetic and paramagnetic. Diamagnetic means it does not have an affinity to a magnet, or if you take a diamagnetic substance and put a magnet near it, it'll push it away. If you take a paramagnetic substance, and it has an affinity to a magnet, so a magnet will collect it, but it's not magnetizable. Okay? So here you see S, that's your paramagnetic packets, and N is your diamagnetic packets, and it turns out that there are numerous specific types of rocks in the ground that will collect paramagnetic energy. The higher the paramagnetic energy in the soil, the better the plants do. The reason is that the paramagnetic is the equivalent of a positive in an electromagnetic circuit. Diamagnetic, which is your water in your body and your physical tissues, are diamagnetic. So whenever you have rocks in the soil and the microorganisms creating humus stores paramagnetic energy. So when you have a healthy microorganism population and lots of humus, you store paramagnetic energy in the soil. So you need the right rocks and the right soil. And so what happens is the sun, particularly when there's solar flares, blasts these energy packets out. The plant sucks the energy in through the leaves. The soil sucks it in through the root structures and through the microorganisms and the humus structure. Remember I said they act like antennas. This is what they're receiving. And that creates an electromagnetic circuit. So water and plant tissue has a relatively negative charge, okay? And then there's a relatively positive charge in the soil and the rocks. So if you understand basic electromagnetism, you know the Earth is wrapped in an electromagnetic field. You know that, right? You know how, have you seen a picture of the electromagnetic field? Well, an electrical field works in 90 degrees opposition to any magnetic field. So as the magnetic field wraps itself around the Earth, it shoots an electrical potential off. So every plant that absorbs the paramagnetic energy from the sun and from the rocks, which only happens in soils that are properly balanced, produces an electrical current at 90-degree angle to the phase or to the angle of the surface of the Earth, and that's why plants grow up toward the sun. So you understand that? Okay? Now look at this. This is a picture of an Irish round tower, and it might interest you to know that almost all the ancient church steeples and churches, anywhere where there was monks, almost all the buildings the monks built were made out of the exact rocks that were known to be paramagnetic. Isn't that interesting? The monks in almost every religion and in Egypt, all the temples in Egypt are all made of highly paramagnetic rocks. And the research shows they must have had to walk for miles in cases to carry these rocks back. And the reason they did that is because the rocks collect the energy from the sun. That round tower is a giant antenna that sucks cosmic energy from the constellations, So you know Leo, Virgo, etc., sucks the energy from the stars and the moon and the sun. It stores it and releases it into the ground. And if you study farming and agriculture, you'll find out in Ireland, the best grasses in the country were always right around the monks' round towers. And so the farmers took turns rotating their cattle through, because the cattle that got to eat near the round tower were always the healthiest. Why? Because the electromagnetic energy there was feeding the plants and stimulating the parasite and the microorganisms and producing tremendous amounts of nutrition in the soil, and therefore in the plants, therefore in the animals, and therefore in man. Okay? So, by the way, Eve, the word Eve in Greek, guess what it means? Life force. What's the difference between you and the dead man? Life force. What was Adam? Adam, creature of the earth, just a statue until Eve came along. Adam, yang, male, material, inert. Eve, yin, female, creative womb, life force. Adam and Eve together, you got life. Okay? There you go. That's what the Bible really means. Okay? I know people don't like that, but that's really what it means. Okay? I could give you a 10-hour lecture on that. I'd love to, actually. So what do we have? We have antenna systems, we have energy storage, we have energy conversion, we have energy release, and we have commercial farming. What does commercial farming do? Well, commercial farming mines all the minerals out of the soil, because if you keep stripping the plants out of the soil, the plants take the minerals. If you don't have enough variety in the crops, remember the plants inject minerals back and the nutrition back into the soil, so you rape the soil. When you rape the soil and kill off the microorganisms, you lose all the electrical potential of the soil, and what you have is plants that become addicted to chemical fertilizers, and the parasites attack those plants because they're Mother Nature's garbage, so she sends her garbage collectors after them. So what do? We say, boy, we got a lot of problems with parasites. Let's spray the hell out of them bastards. Kill them all. And the chemical companies think, fantastic, look at all the money we're making. We're making billions, right? And it might interest you to know that in 1945, we only sprayed 200,000 pounds of herbicides, pesticides, fungicides, and rodenticides on the soil in the United States. And by the year 2000, we were up to 2 billion pounds, and crop losses have doubled. Crop losses have doubled. We went from 200,000 pounds a year to 2 billion, and you're eating it, folks, and it's neurogenic, and it's hormonally based. They attack your nervous system and attack your hormonal system. And there's no sense taking a bunch of fancy supplements if you're eating crap food. And it might interest you to know that any of your supplements that are made from the plants, coming in all your greens foods, oh, eat these greens. Well, liquefied poison ain't any better than, drugs. I mean, it might look better and smell better, but it's crap. You can't make chicken salad out of chicken shit. Unless you're a microorganism. And you're all too big for that. And then if you even could, you got to survive down there. Okay? Well, it might interest you to know, ladies and gentlemen, that the human acupuncture meridians and acupuncture points are receptive points for this cosmic energy. And there's acupuncture points on plants, there's acupuncture points on animals, and there's acupuncture points all over the planet. And the largest energy vortexes are right where your major cities are. New York, Los Angeles, almost every major city in the world. London is sitting right on top of what the Hindus call a chakra, which feeds energy into the Earth's acupuncture or meridian system. Okay? Mess with the Earth, and you mess with everything it grows, because we're all physically emanations of the Earth. The Earth is our mother. Mess with mama, you mess with yourself. Your acupuncture system does exactly what's going on here in the plant. Everything I've just talked about is in you, completely. Everything. You screw it up, you screw it up. And there's nothing you can do running around to the doctor, cut this, burn this, slash this, cut this, suck this, tuck this. I mean, if you watch television, it's just gnarly what people are doing these days. I got people coming to me with bags of the most of the people that see me are rich. I mean, I got 10 clients that fly their own jets. I charge a lot of money. I don't want to see people anymore. They drive me freaking nuts. So I put a big fence up there. Got to cost you 10 grand for your first visit, or I won't even bother with you, right? So it keeps people away. But when they do come, they come with these bags of vitamins. I've had people that are paying $1,200 a month for vitamins. They got the most expensive shit on the planet, right? But they're sick, and they've been eating that way, and they got a list of famous doctors they've seen, right? And what are they eating? I just saw them drive through Burger King. And they're eating TV dinners, and they're microwaving. Oh my God! We got to get this is the system's backwards. We got to turn this shit around. We got to get it right. We got to start pumping our money into where it means something. There's nothing you can cover up with a pill, and most of the damn pills came from that crap soil that we're making out there. We got to fix this thing up. A 21-year study comparing organic versus non-organic fields showed that there was an 85% increase in microorganism populations on organically managed fields, or I'll say that backwards. Commercially farmed fields were found to have an 85% reduction in the microorganism population. Now, everything I just told you, all those things about microorganisms, were they important? Can you see that? And the average commercially farmed field has an 85% reduction in microorganisms. That means 85% of the plant's immune system is gone. It means 85% of the plant's ability to extract protein from the soil is gone. It means 85% of the vitamins and minerals and hormones are gone. It means the plants are like beggars. You know why beggars eat out of garbage cans? Because they have to. And that's why plants suck up chemical fertilizers and crap that we spray on the soil, because they're starving to death, so they swell up. They got bright colors in them, which is a lot to do. They spray. You guys probably don't know this. They spray colors on plants. Have you ever seen those waxed up apples in the store? That shit's sprayed on there. I mean, see, if you saw what they do to this stuff, it'd scare the hell out of you. You're eating, that might as well be a model car. Right? And then what do? You buy some Vectrex or whatever. I need some protein. You can't figure out why you shit bricks. It drives me nuts. Then people hire me to help them, and they sit there and argue with me. You mean my steel bar is not any good? Let me show you something. Here, put your goddamn steel bar on the counter, leave it there for 2 friggin' weeks, and put a strawberry beside it from an organic field, and see how long it takes the ants to find that strawberry. And those ants will have to be on Skid Row before they touch that steel bar. Or any of that crap. Candied crap. We have gyms. To me, a gym is a church for health. It is a place where we go. It used to be the life force of the community. Bodybuilders used to be about life, about food. It was a health culture. You go back to the days of Eugene Sandow. In those days, you got a guy who at 5'9", 211 pounds, put 300 pounds over his head with one bloody arm. And there was no steroids then. There was no superfoods and super bars. There was just good training, good eating, good resting, and probably a bit of sex too. At least for Eugene, that's probably what killed him. But I don't mind going that way, as long as it's not malnutrition. We said I want to die either going 200 miles an hour in my favorite car or get screwed to death. Okay. But either one of those takes nutrition, right? To drive 200 miles an hour, you got to have circuits up here. And to get screwed to death, you've got to really be good at it, So here's an interesting little factoid for you. This one might stand you up in your chair. How much time have I got? Well, I get a little wound up. I also get pissed off. If I swear, excuse me. I get pissed off. I can't believe the kind of shit that's going on. I mean, we have so many scientists and so many doctors that know this shit. We're swimming in them. Our universities are swimming in them. The drug manufacturers, they know all this stuff. This just because this makes people healthy, and healthy people don't buy drugs and they don't buy crap supplements, right? I'm here to tell you, don't chase your damn tail. Eat good food and put your money where it belongs. It belongs supporting farmers. Do you know that the #1 rate of suicide today is among small farmers? Because the large conglomerates are selling you potatoes and carrots so damn cheap they can't even begin to compete with you. They can't pay their mortgages. And the large farming conglomerates, of which there's 5 that produce 90% of the food in the world, and by the way, as an ex-paratrooper, let me tell you, get nervous when 5 companies control 90% of your food supply. You don't need to be a genius to figure that one out, okay? When the Romans used to capture other countries, the first thing they did is they sent the soldiers out, and guess what they made the soldiers do? Salt the fields. Salt the fields. What do commercial farmers do? Salt the fields with NPK fertilizer. Why did the Romans want to salt the fields? So the farmers couldn't grow food. They had to come to the Romans, the government, to get the food and to get the seeds and to know when to. They wanted to control farming, because if you control farming, you control food. You control food, you control people. And you guys are about to be massively controlled. 5 companies produce 90% of your food. That should make you very nervous. Okay, and this should make you even more nervous. The average American farming family depletes 7,000 of acres of land every 100 years. We're literally running out of farmland, and consider that by the year 2030 there will be 10 billion people on this planet. That's scary stuff. Current research shows the next world war will probably be fought over water. Only 1% of all the water in the world is drinkable by humans. We're running out. Have you noticed the price of water lately? Did you know that Nestle just bought out Avion? You know, the big food companies, the same large food companies that run your nutrition programs in your universities, that have their hands in the chemical pile, that have their hands in the drug pile, are buying up all the water supplies right now. And they're raping your soil. And soon they'll be feeding. Did you ever see that movie, that sci-fi movie, Soylent Green? That's some serious shit if you know this stuff, right? Put your money where it belongs, in the hands of small organic farmers. We've got to rebuild our soils or we're dead. Your wallet is the most powerful vote. Leave nothing to George Bush except tilling soils. That's what he's good at. But you notice he doesn't use a rototiller, he uses Scud missiles and all that other stuff, right? George has expensive soil tillers. The problem is he doesn't know how to farm for a damn. So he goes over to other people's countries, tears the hell out of the place in the name of terrorism, which is a crock of shit. The largest terrorist organization in the world is the United States, for God's sakes. Do a little homework. I mean, I can talk about power cleans if you want, but... What good's a power clean when you're so damn tired you can't put your socks on? 4 to 6% of the organic, 4 to 6% is normal. So a healthy organic farm would have 4 to 6% organic matter in the soil, or humus. Remember, humus, human? Commercially farmed fields today on average range between 0 and 1.5. Sand is 0. So when you plant plants in soil that's down to 0 to 1.5%, remember, why do beggars eat out of garbage cans? Because they have to. So when you eat that stuff, you're eating plants that have sucked all the toxins and garbage out of the soil because they have no choice if they're going to survive. And we're ruining the soils. I took this picture. This is a very interesting picture. When you drive into El Centro, California, from out of the desert between Arizona and California, as you come into the farmlands, look, this is what you see. The desert's butted right up against the farmlands. And as we ruin more and more farmland, the desert gets bigger and bigger. Do a little homework. Any of you ever studied the geography of deserts? What's happening with deserts all over the world right now? Are they growing or shrinking? They're growing like crazy. You know what that means? We got farmers, and we got the greenhouse effect, and we got growing deserts, and we got 5 companies that own 90% of your food, and we got a bunch of synthetic vitamins that don't do a damn thing for you. As a matter of fact, research shows that they often make you sterile, tired, and they're processed by your liver just like a drug. So forecast the future, and remember, you vote with your wallet. George ain't going to help you, and if you don't like George, remember, your military is about the size of my left little finger, so we could fit you on one of our aircraft carriers. Okay, so our natural heritage. Einstein says to learn about health, you must study health. What a concept, right? To learn about health, you got to study health. Like, we spent billions on researching cancer. What do we have? Sicker, more and more drugs, a bunch of dying people. 50% of people spend their life savings in the last 5 days of their life in the hospital. Chemo and radiation therapy on average is about 4% effective, but they don't tell you that, right? Because it's a big money maker. So we must begin now to study health, for soon there will be no recollection of what health means, and that's happening already. My wife and I are constantly amazed as we travel around the world. If you go to London, England right now, in the summertime actually, you will see kids, and Sydney, Australia, you will see kids that are so fat, and they're walking around in two-piece bathing suits, and I swear to God, these people must have never seen a shiny piece of glass, because it is scary, okay? These people are walking around, and kids now are so fat and so obese and so unhealthy, they don't even know what health looks like. These kids, they just don't even know that they're fat. They don't even know that that's not what Adam and Eve were supposed to look like, right? That's what we're getting to. People don't even know what health is. I've had oodles of patients that came back to me when they went and saw a doctor for their back pain, their neck pain, or whatever, and the doctor says, "What'd you expect? You're 35, you're getting old." 35. I'm 44, and I can outlift and outrun almost every athlete I've ever trained, even to this day. And my son, who's 26, still cannot beat me in a wrestling match or anything, and I'm waiting for him to try again. Okay? Why? Not because I do anything magic. You look at me, I don't use any steroids. I mean, the last thing I can afford is shrinkage. So we have to answer the $1.5 trillion question. It might interest you to know that's what the United States spends every year on medical expenses alone. The United States medical system is the largest taxpayer of all American businesses. If we were to shut down the American Medical Association today, we would not be able to afford cruise missiles, smart bombs, and our military would probably be laid off. That might interest you, since you know where all the money's going. Hey, why do you think it costs Bill $900 a cigar, and the seat that I saw a report one time, the toilet seat in the jet that the president's flying, just the toilet seat was $900. They had to replace the toilets, cost them $900. Right? Well, give me a break. Okay, so $1.5 trillion question. How did we survive 2.8 million years of evolution without doctors, therapists, nutritionists, medical drugs, and have far better health than we do now? Now, a lot of people say, oh, that's not true. We used to die early. Hey, guess what? That's a bunch of BS. The medical system wants you to think that. You have to look at what's called age-adjusted statistics, because when you take all the people out that are saved by emergency medicine today, when you take all the people out that are being kept alive on iron lungs and kidney dialysis, when you take all the people that in old folks' homes that should have died a long time ago, when you take all the people that should have died at birth but emergency medicine saved their life, Mother Nature would have recycled them, take all the people that should have died in automotive and industrial accidents and do the math, and guess what? We're living 1.5 years longer than we did on average in 1840. And all of that is attributed to sanitation improvements, every bit of it. So we're not doing better at all. We're going backwards, but they don't want to tell you the truth because it's too expensive for you to do that. Well, Dr. Price was a famous researcher that investigated native tribes that had never been touched by white man and some that did have contact with white man. He showed that the way we were able to survive for so long in the wild and have quite a healthy existence, which he documented scientifically, was we worked with Mother Nature. We didn't work against her. We are part of Mother Nature. We just started getting a little too cocky for ourselves. Okay? He found where all these native societies were. They all practiced whole food eating. By the way, all the natives in most every tribe in the world ate every consumable part of an animal. The organs, the nervous system, the tongue, the brains, everything. They didn't waste anything. They were respectful to the animals. Okay, they didn't waste it. I could get into a spiritual talk, but I wrote about that in my article. And the average hunter-gatherer worked 3 to 4 hours a day and was done for the rest of the day. Okay, think about that. The average hunter-gatherer society worked 3 to 4 hours a day, and they were usually done before noon. And guess what they spent most of the rest of their time doing? Playing with their kids, educating their children. Now that's a concept. No Game Boys, no MTV, right? No babysitters. You know, they actually had a relationship with their children. And you know what? They didn't sell 15 metric tons of Ritalin a year then either. A drug, by the way, which 2 years ago was shown by research in the UK to have the exact effect on the human brain that cocaine does. They couldn't tell the difference on a PET scan. It was identical to cocaine. And when they presented the research to the manufacturer, we had no idea, and they never changed the formula. Of course not. Cocaine is one of the most addictive drugs in the world, and so is Ritalin. Right? That's a great thing. 20% of American fifth graders right now are on Ritalin. Hey, how's the future? That should scare the hell out of you. Right? Why do you think we have so much ADD and attention deficit, attention hyperactivity disorder these days? Well, it might interest you to know the average breakfast cereal is 46 to 53% sugar. And then they put skim milk on top of there, which is just pure sugar, and it's pasteurized, so it's bloody well dead. So you have sugar with your sugar, and you got no enzymes to metabolize anything, so what you got is a bunch of wind-up toys running around, pissing everyone off, so they put you on a drug to, help you out a little bit, stabilize you while they inject you for the rest of your life. Beautiful. And then they come to me with their bag of pills and say, I don't know what's wrong, my back hurts, and I used to be able to run the 40 in, 4.9, now I'm running it in 5.4, and I'm 27. I'm like, you're 27? Oh my God, this is a problem. So the book, Nutrition and Physical Degeneration, documents Price's 10-year expedition around the world doing scientific investigations into the diets and lifestyles. He looked in their mouth, he counted their cavities. If you don't know, Weston Price was a very, very highly regarded scientist. He was also a genius. He was a expert at health, he was a dentist, and he was a highly respected scientist. So the book is absolutely essential reading. Essential reading. If you don't have it, get it right away, put it under your pillow, read it every night, and go straight to the organics aisle. So what did he show? When he studied, he showed Central Africans were healthy and vital. They lived on a splendid variety of plant and animal foods. The Pygmies, he said the Pygmies were so effective at hunting, they were probably one of the only tribes in the world that was never taxed. He said they were completely relaxed, very friendly, very sociable people. They managed their environment like it was a piece of cake. These people were beautiful people. Everywhere he went, he found that the natives ate as much meat as they could. The only thing that limited meat consumption was availability. That was it. Anywhere he found a vegetarian tribe in the world, he said within a few miles there was a healthier tribe that ate meat. Okay? He was looking, trying to find vegetarian people that were healthy. He could not find any. The limiting factor everywhere in the world except for religious beliefs was meat availability, nothing else. Animals bioaccumulate nutrition. That's what they do. They accumulate nutrition, right? Anywhere where it freezes in the winter. We didn't have refrigeration until 1945, so what do you think you were eating in the winter? If you come from anywhere outside of the equator zone, you had to have been eating animals through the winter, or you wouldn't be here. So here he showed Amazon Indians. He goes through 16 cultures and tribes from around the world and documents it in about a nice 500-page book. It's amazing. And it shows you that we're not doing well at all. We don't have time for our kids. We spend $14 million a minute on health care. We're the sickest people on the planet. We go to war with each other over stupid things. We got kids. Our kids are just pumped full of drugs. They're actually marketing drugs directly to children nowadays. Have you noticed that on television? Come to the United States and watch television for a few minutes. They'll be selling you a drug in just a few minutes. They even tell the kids, tell your mother to dial, right? If she loves you to hold still and shut up, right? We'll just drug the little bugger, right? Of course, what do we have? C. Everett Koop tells the United States population that 8 out of the 10, it was either 8 or 9 out of the 10 top diseases killing Americans could all be handled with nutrition. Do you know what happened to them within hours? They fired them. Then the next lady, you remember her, the black lady? I can't remember what her name was. What did she say? She says, practice safe sex. They said, well, what should the kids do? She said, teach them to masturbate. They got rid of her. She was with Everett Koop, right? Boom, she was gone, right? So no, we got to keep people all screwed up, scared to death, and they actually have to think Adam and Eve were the first 2 people on the planet, and has nothing to do with life force, has nothing to do with the soil, and has nothing to do, we don't want to pay attention to any other philosophy. We don't want to pay attention to Chinese philosophy, Hindu philosophy, Islamic philosophy. Let's just pretend we're the only people on the earth and kick the shit out of everybody else and ruin the soil, and maybe by the time we get there, we can eat them. I don't know. What else is going on? I know I'm might sound radical to you, but I'm telling you the damn truth. Are you going to change it overnight? No, but the first thing you got to do is get yourself healthy, because you can't make a difference in the world if you're not healthy. I tell my students all the time, get yourself healthy. You cannot give what you don't have. Most of us in this room are healthcare providers. You cannot give what you don't have. You can only give what your surplus is. Your cup must runneth over before you can really, honestly give health to someone else. And most of what you give to people is life force. You can do more with love than any of your gadgets. I can tell you that for a fact. I tell you, it's the truth. My patients, most of my patients are so screwed up, I don't know what the hell to do with them. I got all sorts of tests on them, and they're just discombobulated. It's like someone threw a frog in a blender and said, here, fix this. So half the time, I just sit down at the end of the table, put my hands on their feet, and I say, Lord, if you want this one, you need to put a lightning bolt through me right now. Because they done ate every vitamin and every supplement on the face of this earth, and they feel like crap, and I don't know where to begin with this one. I literally am brought to that level with a lot of my clients, and I can tell you I could probably do more with that than most of you could with a goniometer and a vibrator and a laser and any other toy. Okay. And then what do we have? Now we got all these diet experts. The Atkins diet, eat this way. We got the McDougall diet. We got the Ornish diet. We got the South Beach diet. You know what? I had my researchers do a little research. I said, I'm just curious, how many bloody diet books are there? 4,036 they found. That was about 3 years ago. 4,036 books you could buy on diet in the bookstores around the world right now. You know what that means? If you got, let me tell you something. Who can tell me how many branches of Christianity there is? Yeah. Interesting. We got any Christians in the room? Do any of you read the Bible? Okay. Well, let me tell you, there's 122 recognized divisions of Christianity from one book, and there was one man named Jesus. Now, I'm Paul Chek. I own the Chek Institute, and I have a bunch of practitioners around the world, about 3,000. They call themselves Chek practitioners. Now, if I was to die and come back here in 100 years, and there was 122 different variations of Chek practitioner, I would be seriously concerned that all of my students were bloody confused. Do you understand that? If you get 120 that means 120 different opinions from me. That means I done screwed up. Okay? So don't take me wrong. I'm just saying we've gotten so far from the message. If you study world religion, all of them say the same thing. Do unto others as you would like them to do to you. Oh boy, we forgot that though. Right? Didn't we? Couldn't get past that. I'm going to publish a new Bible. It just says, do unto others as you want them to do. It says that 15,000 times in a row. Just pass it around. Okay? So what's my point? We got 4,036 diet books. We got 122 religions out of one book. I say we're as confused as hell. Okay? Well, let's look at the facts. North American, Eskimos, and Indians research, Price's book, and lots of other resources I can show you show that the Eskimos lived on 90% fats, oils, and protein, only 10% carbohydrate. What the hell? Have you ever seen tomatoes growing out of an ice field? Right? So what do you do if your dad is of Native American Indian or Haida Indian or Eskimo descent? And maybe your mother is Scandinavian, right? I, myself, my mother's side is from Alsace-Lorraine, which is over by France and Germany, and my father was half-blooded Cherokee Indian, right? So I'm a protein type from hell. You put me on any of the standard diets beside the Atkins diet, and I won't function very well, right? So the Atkins diet works for me, but what if you're a Hawaiian or a Polynesian and you go on the Atkins diet? I'll tell you what, you will be having to get a series of colonics every month because you will be so backed up. You will be looking like Flex Wheeler on the toilet trying to get that shit out of you. Okay? So, very simply, when you go near the equator, you see more carbohydrate consumption for thousands of years. You don't need to be a genius. Read Price's book. Look at nature. Refrigeration wasn't invented till after the Second World War. We had to live off what was there, period. So near all the tropical zones, guess what? Fish and vegetables and fruits. Very simple. They need more vegetables and fruits because that's what Mother Nature programmed them to eat. If you go to either end, where we have a definite winter, plants didn't grow in the winter. You couldn't store much except root vegetables, right? The Eskimos bury stuff in ice and they actually let it rot and ferment, and they eat it in a rotten fermented form, and it's actually very healthy for you. You may not want to try it, but it works. So really what we have is we have a variation of the theme. Now we have people crossbreeding, so that's what metabolic type testing is for, right? You got to do testing. So you can read my book, How to Eat, Move, and Be Healthy. There's a basic test. You can go to the metabolic typing website, Bill Walcott's website. There's all sorts of people doing metabolic typing. I don't care who you go to. I'm just making a point. If your diet is right for you, you feel good, you function well, you think well, you poop well, you don't stink. You're not like most people in gyms. You're not wound out and stressed out. You can last 4 hours between meals. You got mental clarity, and your little fella stands up. Okay? Right? What do we have? We got people taking make it stand up pills today because they don't know how to eat right and take a bloody vacation. Right? You talk to anybody that's on Viagra. Say, when did your dick actually work last time? And they'll tell you, when I go on vacation, it works fine. You know why? Because you forget about your mortgage, you forget about the idiots at work, and you forget about all your stress, so your hormonal system balances out. Most of my patients say the only time they didn't have pain and they had normal sexual performance was when they were on vacation. I say, well, why didn't you just stay? Right? Oh, but I got to pay for my vacation house, my Mercedes, my Rolex, my alligator shit. That's all shit. They can't bury that. Your hole's only going to be 6 feet long when you're dead. And they don't put Porsches in there, baby. Get your shit right. I've literally had millionaires say, organic food, you know how expensive that is? So I say, fine, you see that Ferrari you drove in? Here's a fork and a knife. Go eat that damn thing. Right? I ride a Harley Davidson. It gets 35 miles to the gallon. That's all I need. I make lots of noise. It stimulates my testosterone. And I save petrol. And I feel fantastic. And I work out in the gym. And then all these guys with all their big houses and fancy cars, their dicks don't work, their brains don't work, they can't balance a checkbook. And the women leave them in a hurry for younger men. Why? Because they're eating shit food, to put it bluntly. I'm not kidding. I'm dead serious. My book, How to Eat, Move, and Be Healthy, is what you've got to do foundationally. You don't do that, the rest of it's just a waste of time and money. You just have expensive poop. Okay? So what do you got to do? You got to test yourself and find out what your metabolic type is. And guess what? Depending on the health of your body, your metabolic type can change. You get a protein type who's got a parasite infection. The parasites will alter the pH in his intestinal tract, in his lymphatic fluid. Wherever those parasites go, they'll alter the pH. When they alter the pH, they alter the biochemical reactions, they alter hormonal reactions. So you can actually, and they'll make you crave food. You get a yeast infection, you get a fungal infection. I could sit here and list a bacterial dysbiosis. You're taking medical drugs. You're eating wrong. All of these things will cause shifts in your metabolic type, and you literally have to learn to pay attention to your gut and stop reading books. There's an inverse relationship between health and how many diet books people read. I guarantee you that. Okay? the best thing you can do is, I tell them, the best thing you can do is throw it away. Read Nutrition and Physical Degeneration and get the facts, right? So here's the facts. Here's the diet facts. This is all you need to know. Don't feed lions leaves and don't feed giraffes meat. That's it, right? How many times have you seen headlines on the news of lions who are straight meat eaters getting heart attacks? Well, let me tell you something. It's interesting. The first heart attack in the United States of America occurred in 1921. And all of a sudden, we're supposed to not eat red meat because it's going to clog your arteries. Well, how the hell did we survive at least 2.8 million years since we branched off from our chimpanzee ancestors living on red meat? How come all of a sudden it's bad for us? If it's so damn bad, if saturated fat's so bad, why is it the only fat that your cells manufacture? Why do you manufacture cholesterol if it's so bad for you? I'll tell you, it's not red meat is bad. It's shit, commercially farmed meat that's fed poisonous crap and pumped full of drugs. That's what the problem is. Don't be blaming it on the animals. They're here in service to you and to me. It's not the animals. It's not the red meat, because those lions don't have any problem. Those giraffes, they don't have any problem. They eat what they're supposed to eat. They're just fine. They poop fine. They feel fine. They don't need any sexual performance drugs either. Okay? So it's a real simple formula here. If you're eating wrong and you're eating garbage food, you're going to screw up your Krebs cycle. You will have an energy crisis. Whenever you go into an energy crisis, immediately your body has to decide, okay, who do I short on energy today? I'm out of energy, right? It takes between 55 and 75% of the calories you eat just to run your food from mouth to anus. Most people don't realize that. Do your homework. Study John Berardi's articles. It's right in there. He tells you the facts. 55 to 70 or even 75% of your calories are used just to run the system, just to degulate, digest, metabolize, assimilate, and eliminate. Costs you 55 to 70% of the calories delivered. But if you're burning up more nutrition to run the factory than you're getting in your food, you're going bankrupt. You're going nutritionally bankrupt. That's what we have today. Bankruptcy. Health bankruptcy. Aaron Fried Pfeiffer said all the way back in 1957, he said most people die by the age of 35 and their corpses just walk around for another 35 years. Okay? So when you go into an energy crisis, your body has some serious decisions to make. Who is it? I'm going to ask you, let's pretend you all have an energy crisis because you're not eating right and you're not going to bed on time, you're not following the basic principles you need to follow. So I'm going to ask you, when you have to start shorting one of these biological systems for energy, which one's it going to be? Your nervous system? Your hormonal system? Your immune system? Your thermoregulatory system? Your reproductive system? Your circulatory system? Your digestive system? Or your eliminative system? Hey, which one do you want to short? Who do you put on reserve? Well, here's a stat for you. 90 to 95% of North Americans are constipated. We sell in the United States of America $1.69 million worth of laxatives every day. There are so many constipated people going to emergency rooms that they had to change the criteria for giving out laxatives. It used to be if you hadn't pooped at least once in a day, they would give you a laxative. Now they made it once every 2 days because they were giving out so many laxatives to people that had no insurance. It was making the medical system spend tons of money on laxatives, right? So I've just given you factual proof that on average Americans are quite full of shit. Okay? Okay, so look, your body has to harvest the energy somewhere. It might also interest you to know that about 90% of Americans have been shown through research to have a parasite infection right now. About 85 to 90% of Americans have a dysbiosis. Instead of having 85% friendly, they've got 85% unfriendly bacteria in their intestinal tracts, which is literally poisoning their body and throwing their complete biochemistry off and sending them chasing after pills and this patch and that patch. It's a waste of time. You'll spend your money forever. The only reason these things make you feel a little better is because any energy input into the system gives you a sense of feeling better. But energy inputs aren't correction. I can prove that to you. Show me where your car is. I'll walk outside, hit it with a sledgehammer. That would be an energy input, wouldn't it? Right? And it'll feel different, but it won't be better. Right? And I can prove this to you easily. Any of you in this room that has pain in your back or your neck, take a 1/4 of an inch heel lift or even an 1/8 of an inch heel lift, stick it in any shoe, I don't give a damn. That will change your proprioceptive systems and alter the energy systems in your body enough that you will have pain relief probably from anywhere from a day to a week. If you just keep switching the heel lift back and forth, you'll keep tricking the proprioceptive system. I'm just showing you that an energy input doesn't mean you're doing anything for anybody. It just means you're tricking the system. Why play games? Let's get to the basics here. Okay? So we cannot afford, if you've got problems with your nervous system, hormonal system, or any of these biological systems, it means you're probably making basic mistakes and you need to get your priorities right. So you might want to say, well, when you don't eat right, what am I going to look like? I'll show you. Right? Remember, your body always has a need for nutrition, and it sends you after nutrition. So if you eat food and there's no nutrition in it, your brain says, keep eating, keep eating. I'm short on omega-3 fatty acids. Keep eating. I'm short on B12. Keep eating. I'm short, and you just keep eating. So what do? People are literally starving to death, and this is what they look like. Oh, that's toaster. I won't get into that, but eating bread is a bad idea. Okay. Because what happens down here is a big question mark. Simply, about 55 to 60% of white-skinned people are gluten intolerant. As soon as you eat gluten, it inflames your intestinal tract, wipes out your microvilli. You can't digest dairy anymore, so you keep stressing your immune system, and then you have to divert all your energy into your immune system, and anytime you inflame the gut, you elevate your cortisol levels. That elevates your stress levels, so now you throw your blood sugar all over the place. Should I keep going? You're screwed, right? All in a toaster. So there you go. That's common. Travel around the world like I do. You see that all the time. I actually had to go to McDonald's recently in Australia. I couldn't get my email anywhere. The only place in this little town, I was doing an advanced course in nutrition and lifestyle coaching in the mountains in Australia, and the only place that had a wireless internet connection was bloody McDonald's. So I sat in them stinky fats, and I watched these kids just bouncing all over the place and throwing stuff, and they're just wound up. I'm like, wow, I've never seen anything like this before. This is wild. This is movie stuff, right? And it stunk. Have you ever smelled the fats in McDonald's? You can't get it out of your clothes. It's gross. It got stuck in my hair. Okay? So what happens is when you don't eat right, first you get tired, then you eat too much carbohydrate for energy, then you get fat and tired, and usually you get sick more and more, and finally you get obese, and then you're diseased, and then you're dead, right? So what do you see today? You see all sorts of fat people with fat kids because they're doing the same thing. They're eating the same way. They're doing the same stuff. If you read the book Pottinger's Cats, if you've never read the book Pottinger's Cats, write it down. It's not an expensive book. You can get it from the price-pottinger.org website. Read that book. If that doesn't just straighten you right up, then you're already dead. So what did Price show? Price showed that whenever he went to native societies, wherever they had not touched white man's food, what I call the 4 white devils, they hadn't touched white flour, white sugar, no pasteurized dairy products, and no salt, no table salt. Sodium chloride is a poison. It doesn't occur in nature. Salt is not sodium chloride. What do? The salt companies extract all the nutrition, sell it to GNC, sell you sodium chloride, because 97% of all the salt used in the world is used in chemical manufacturing processes and food manufacturing processes, but most of it's used for chemistry, so they got to get all the trace minerals out of there because they disrupt chemical compositions. So they don't make salt for human beings. You got to buy sea salt or you're just getting poisoned. So the doctors say, oh, don't eat salt, it raises your blood pressure. No, not if you eat real salt. And there's lots of experts out there to prove it. But my point is, as long as you don't eat the 4 white devils and you eat what your native race is designed to eat, Price showed that you'll have normal dental structure, minimal cavities, if any, optimal bone growth and development, and minimal disease. As a matter of fact, if you read the book Nutrition and Physical Degeneration, you will find something very interesting. In several countries, among several tribes, they did not even have a word for cancer in their language. In 1936, Dr. Romig A white doctor that took care of many of the trappers and North American Indians up in the region of British Columbia said until white man had brought white processed food, until the trappers started bringing the food up to the Indians, he had never seen cancer in his life amongst the Indians, and they didn't even have a word for it in their language, right? That was 1936. Here, 1 in 2 of us is going to die of cancer. So, there's your first nutritional lesson. If it's white flour, white sugar, processed table salt, or pasteurized dairy, don't put it in your mouth, only put it in your enemy's mouth. Okay? So, let me show you what happened when people ate the 4 white devils within the first generation. So that means if you exposed your kids, so say their kids all of a sudden showed up at the trading post and some trapper says, here, try this gummy bear, right? And they started getting a hold of it. And this happened in almost all the port cities like Seattle, San Francisco, where the natives started having access to white man's food. Watch this, in the first generation. Look at what happened. Look at the rotten teeth falling out. Already, that is just ugly. How many of you ladies would love to kiss him? Right? It might interest you to know that Weston Price's research showed the instant that you put processed sugar in your mouth, white sugar, the lymphatic flow through your teeth reverses. Instead of the lymphatic fluid coming through the tubules of the teeth from the maxillary arteries and the mandibular arteries to wash the teeth and keep the unfriendly bacteria out of the teeth, the instant you put sugar in your mouth, it reverses the flow and it sucks pathogenic bacteria up into your lymphatic system and into your body, and they circulate until they get to their favorite organ. And in 600 repetitive cases, he took the bacteria out of his patient's teeth and injected it into rabbits. And in every single case, the rabbit, within 2 weeks, had the exact same disease as patient did. All he did was suck the bacteria out of their teeth. He pulled their cavities out, opened them up, and took an extract, mixed it up in a fluid, and injected it into rabbits. And in every case of 600 cases, the rabbit got the same disease that his patient had, just by taking the bacteria out of the mouth. What percentage of kids' breakfast cereals are sugar? 46 to 53% straight sugar. What are we putting on our breakfast cereals? Skim milk, sugar. What do they put on top of that? White sugar. Hey, isn't this genius? Right? He showed that within the next generation, so these people then had children, and those kids were already born with bony growth and development. Look, a narrowed maxillary arch. These teeth are crowded. You've got a faulty rule of thirds. So what you see is, look at the long bottom third. Look at the tiny little noses on these kids. The instant that you get a short middle third, so if you just go like that, I'll show you what the rule of thirds is. Put your thumb up like that. With your teeth together, that should be the exact distance from the bottom of your teeth to the bottom of your nose. That should be the exact length of your nose, so that's the middle third. And that should be the exact length from between your eyes to where your hair should be growing. Okay? So you got 3/3. That's called the rule of thirds in craniofacial growth and development. 1, 2, 3. The cranium grows in that ratio if the genetics are working correctly. He showed within 1 generation already they had dysfunctional craniofacial growth and development. Ladies and gentlemen, your nasal air passages and your oral airway, if you do that, the size of that oral airway and your nasal passages are calibrated to your body size and dimensions so you can effectively oxygenate your body. These children will never be able to effectively oxygenate their body without opening their mouth and dropping their head down and forward. We call that forward head posture. Anybody that does any growth orthopedics or athletes knows forward head posture is a mechanical disorder. And research in 1988 by Shirley Sarman showed that in 1988, before the computer boom, 98% of high school students already had what he listed as significant postural faults. 98%. In 1988. Today it would be at least 100%. Okay? So that was only 1 generation on white man's food. That's some scary stuff. Okay? People had, but we can't feed organic. It's so expensive. They play this BS banjo. You ever heard that before? We can't feed everyone organic. It would cost too much. The farmers couldn't do it. Oh, have I got news for you. You guys probably, a lot of you don't know, but I collect books. I'm a bit of a bookaholic. I've got maybe $500,000 worth of them. a lot of rare medical books. And I like to find the truth. And you can't get it. If you want to find the truth about anything, get a book prior to 1950. Okay? So here's a research report done by Dr. King. All the way back in about 1910, the American government was worried, how are we going to feed people? We are running out of land already. We're running out of space. We're running out of arable land. We're not going to have enough food. And how the hell are the Chinese able to feed all those people? Because only 14% of China's landmass can be farmed. Did you know that? That's pretty wild. Only 14% of the landmass of China can be farmed. Something like 60-some-odd% of our landmass or more could be farmed. But we've ruined most of it now. So look at this. He went and investigated Chinese farming systems, and when he came back and did his report to the government, he said, I hate to tell you this, but the Chinese are so much better farmers than American farmers. It's a joke. You can't even quantify it. You can't even measure it, right? So here's a quote from his report. While in the Shantung province, King visited a holding that was 1 2/3 acres where the farmer had 10 in his family and was maintaining 1 donkey and 1 pig, showing for his farmland and a maintenance capacity of 3,840 people, 24 donkeys, and 384 pigs to the square mile. So what that means is when they took his little 1 2/3 acres farm and looked at how much he was producing on 1 2/3 of an acre, they said if we gave him a square mile to farm, he would feed 3,840 people, 24 donkeys, and 384 pigs. Or comparatively, he would feed 240 people, 24 donkeys, and 24 pigs to 1 American 40-acre farm, which American farmers regard as too small for a single family. Okay? If you want to look into it, the book's called Farmers of 40 Centuries, and you'll see Chinamen that built irrigation systems that look just like a stepper. All day long, the kids would be out there doing this and running a crankshaft made out of wood, pumping irrigation water out of a ditch into the fields. I mean, this was labor intensive. And they were then, in 1910, outproducing our commercial farmers by hand. Ladies and gentlemen, don't let anybody convince you that we can't go to organic farming. There's only one reason they don't want to go to organic farming. 2 reasons. 3 reasons. 1, you go to organic farming, you don't sell chemicals. You don't sell pesticides, herbicides, fungicides, rodenticides, and chemical fertilizers. You might be wanting to interest, well, why are we selling so many chemical fertilizers? I'll tell you why. Because after the First World War, they said, what are we going to do with all these ammunition factories? And a guy named Liebig said, hey, guess what? You can actually make fertilizer from the same stuff you make gunpowder. Hey, and they said, oh, that's cool. You can? And so they started a massive campaign to sell fertilizer, chemical fertilizer to farmers. What did they blow the World Trade Center up with? Fertilizer. Fertilizer, a primer, and some diesel fuel will blow anything up. Why? Because chemical fertilizer is made exactly from the same constituents as explosives. So United States converted its ammunition factories into fertilizer factories in peacetime. And in England alone, in the year 1956, they spent 24 million pounds marketing chemical fertilizers to farmers alone. Now think about that. In 1956, 24 million pounds would be the equivalent of about 30 million US dollars. Total Gym spent about $30 million to market the Total Gym its first or second year in business, and they sold $100 million in Total Gyms, right? You understand what I'm saying here? You're talking about a marketing campaign that was so ferocious, they made farmers feel like if they weren't using chemical fertilizers, they were idiots, and they did the same thing to American farmers, and now we've got ruined soils, and what does it do? It keeps the drug companies rich. It keeps everybody doing everything but what they should be doing, which is achieving higher levels of consciousness so that there's a fighting chance that we might be able to evolve as a society. What a concept. Thanks. At least I got one fan up here. But for the rest of you that aren't so excited about evolution, let me show you what you're doing to your kids every time you buy them stuff from the grocery store. Here's a research study from New Zealand, by the way, which has far stricter farming standards than the United States or Canada, by the way. The scientists went right into the school lunch line, took the lunch right off the tray, right to the laboratory, and they found 19 pesticide residues, many of which were 10 times the safe limit for a week's consumption, not a day. In New Zealand. And almost every one of those pesticides came from an American company like Monsanto or DuPont. You see, we're effective at screwing everybody up, we Americans. What's the first thing you see when you get off an airplane in a third world country? Coca-Cola, Marlboro, and Gerber food, right? We'll screw your babies up, we'll poison your lungs, we'll get you addicted real quick, and when you're too busy drugging yourself, we'll take over your land, and presto. And then what do? We build runways on it or something. Okay? Oh, it might also interest you to know that the United States Department of Agriculture, and it's probably the same in Canada, so it's not just the U.S., has approved the use of ground plastic, cement powder, sawdust, sewage and industrial waste, and dead animal remains to be added to cattle feed in feedlots, and they feed that to them right now. And anytime you go to a restaurant or to the supermarket, unless you're buying organic meat, you are buying animals that have that put in their feed. Would you care to wonder why they add that to animal feed? One, it saves them money. Two, it makes the animals fat, because all animals will store toxins in fat to protect the nervous system and the organs from the toxins in the body. So the body will shuttle the toxins into the fat. So these farmers make these animals fat very quickly by poisoning them with these toxins. And they don't, have you ever seen a farmer doing a body fat check on a cow to see how much you could sell it for? No, they won't ever let that happen. They sell the animal by the pound. Nobody cares how much fat it is. As a matter of fact, your favorite pieces of meat are the fattiest pieces of meat. Filet mignon is the fattiest piece of meat in an animal. What does that mean? It's the most toxic-laden piece of meat in an animal, right? And what kind of toxins are they? Two classes. Neurogenic, which attacks the nervous system, and hormonal, which attacks your hormonal system. One kills the bug's nervous system, the other one makes it so it can't reproduce. It's basically like putting bugs on the birth control pill. And you eat it in levels that are extremely high, and they say, oh, it's not dangerous, it's not dangerous. Study homeopathics, and then we'll talk then. Oh, it might also interest you to know that all the way back in 1957, Aaron Fried Pfeiffer showed that when you use stilbestrol to accelerate the growth and development of cows, when the meats are analyzed, they're missing some essential amino acids, which I found very interesting. The animals have amino acid imbalances. They do not, it causes them to not be able to produce methionine and lysine. It causes deficiencies in the animal, which is very interesting because none of you are eating meats that weren't raised on these hormones unless you're buying organic. So you actually could end up having an amino acid deficiency. And if you talk to someone like Robert Rakowski or any of these guys like Eric Serrano, some of them actually do analysis of amino acid levels. You can test the amino acid levels in people's brains now. And I know many, many doctors that do these kind of tests, and they find people that are amino acid deficient all over the place, and they're eating plenty of meat if you go by the pound or the gram. But they're not able to digest it, assimilate it, metabolize it, and we may be actually ruining our own meat. Okay, so I'm a little bit over time. I still have a couple things to say, so if you are interested, hang around. It's actually even going to get more interesting, I think. So what are the fruits of commercial farming? Stress, circadian stress, fad dieting, bad posture, poor digestion, overtraining because people are working themselves to death trying to lose weight, overconsumption of stimulant and hyper drinks, people skipping meals because their mental, emotional, spiritual functions always go in sync with your body. You got a sick body, then you're sick emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. We got severe fungal infections. About 90 to 95% of the American population has a fungal infection. Our food quality is the lowest it's ever been, and we're severely overusing aerobic exercise. That's a whole other. I wrote an article on that if you want to read it. It's on Mercola.com. It's called Paul Chek's Perspective on Cardiovascular Exercise, and I basically did the cardiovascular exercise, what I'm doing in this lecture, to the soil. To the soil. But I'll show you that we have a lot of problems with cardiovascular exercise. It's another big industry. It's a bunch of crap, most of it. Okay. I mean, there's applications for it. But it has to be used intelligently, like vitamins or anything else. I mean, if you just willy-nilly cardio everybody, why does most people do cardio? For their heart. Well, we never had any heart attacks till 1921. And I say to people all the time, well, when were you doing cardio training? Oh, we had to do that on hunting. Well, you've obviously never been hunting. I grew up hunting. You go running through the woods, you'll starve to death, man. Those animals that know you're coming, they'll be at home having a Starbucks before you're there. Okay? You got to sneak up on stuff. So what do we have today? We've got not the wheel of life, the wheel of death. We've got damaged, denatured, organically deficient, microorganism deficient, and electrically deficient soils. We're nutrient deficient plants. We're heavily contaminated, 2 billion pounds a year in the U.S. alone, which makes sick animals. And oh, by the way, if you didn't know this, it might interest you to know this. The same exact companies that make drugs for human beings make them for the veterinarians. So as long as the animals are sick, they're really doing well. So what have I shown you? If you ruin the soils and keep them that way, you keep the plants sick, which makes sure the animals are sick, and when you sell drugs to plants, animals, and humans, you got a hell of a market. To the tune of about $175 billion in drug sales alone. 85% of Americans right now are on at least one prescription medical drug. In the year 2002, doctors wrote 3 billion medical drug prescriptions. That's enough prescriptions in the United States alone for every man, woman, and child to have a fresh prescription every month, 12 months of the year. Every man, woman, and child. Right? I would say that's a booming business. What's the business? Disease. What's our business? Health. Right? You can't get it out of a can, folks. Adam and Eve. Remember them? What was Adam? Soil. What was Eve? Life force. We are killing Adam and Eve. We are ruining Adam and Eve. You ruin the soil, you ruin the ground, you ruin Adam, the yang force. You ruin Eve, you ruin yin, you ruin the yin force. No yin, no yang, guess what you got, folks? An empty circle. There's a name for that. Not in the physical domain. If we keep it up, we better hope like hell there is a heaven. Because there's not many other options. We are ruining Adam and Eve. Now, I want to tell you something. There's 2 common reactions to living the way most people are living. One is called a burnout, and the other one's called a brownout. This is my own terminology, so I'll explain what I mean. A burnout means you start getting a lot of inflammation in your body. As soon as your digestive system quits working, undigested food particles get through, overtax your liver, overtax your kidneys, and your immune system starts attacking it, and you get inflammatory problems, and you start seeing all sorts of autoimmune reactions. We've got huge increases in arthritis. We've got all sorts of chronic diseases all over the place, all over the world, going like crazy right now. And they're inflammatory based. The most heavily prescribed drugs in the world are anti-inflammatory drugs. Why? Because when people start getting tired because there's not nutrition in the soil, what do? They turn to drugs and pills and excessive consumption of stimulating beverages like coffee, Red Bull, Ma Huang, ephedra, all these stimulant drinks. Look in the gym, you walk in the gym, and half the stuff in the refrigerator glows in the dark, for God's sakes. That's not food. That's not even for human consumption. Where in nature can you find something that's fluorescent blue? Right? I've got a simple rule. If you can't pronounce a word on the label, don't put it in your mouth. Your liver ain't going to like it. Have you ever noticed almost anything a human being's designed to eat you can pronounce? Can you say chicken? Carrot? Potato? Hot dog? That'll kill you, right? You can say that, but don't eat it. Okay, so look at this. The more tired you get, the more people start leaning on tricks to keep their body functioning. Why? They're running into a biological crisis. Their biological systems are crashing and the body is striving to stay alive. It's doing everything it can. So people are turning to what is most heavily marketed to them. Even in the exercise and healthcare industries, we are being sold absolute crap in the name of health and fitness. And it is garbage, and it is not working. And I give tests in large audiences. Like right now, if I was to question you guys with some one of those questionnaires, you'd find the statistics amongst you is not much different than the public as far as what's wrong with your bodies. So exercise itself and cheap supplements won't do it. We got to get down to the absolute basics of health, or we're going to be gone, folks. And look at this. A study in Australia showed that 60% of Australian 9-year-old children said Ronald McDonald knew more about nutrition than their mother did. Also, Australia last year passed United States for obesity. A country, Australians are normally rugged, outgoing people. I've been lecturing there for many, many years. I've watched the whole country change. They've just Americanized the hell out of the place, and they've passed us for obesity. Can you imagine that? That's radical. I could tell you all sorts of stories about McDonald's, but I'll just tell you this. Don't bloody eat there. Okay? So what do we have? I say we got the dawn of the dead. Okay? Everybody's inflamed. We've got inflammatory problems left, right, and center, head to toe. You name the system, I'll tell you about an inflammatory disease somebody's got. Half of you in this room are probably on anti-inflammatories because you are sucking in things that are fatiguing the system. If you get tired after you eat, there's a simple formula. It means that whatever you ate is taking more energy out of your body than to digest, assimilate, metabolize, and eliminate than it put in. So you keep going into an energy crisis. So when you turn to things repeatedly that stimulate the body but don't give nutrition, you get what the Indians called empty fire. Energy without nutrition, and that is a fast way to kill yourself. Okay, slowly. The next thing, if you have inflammatory processes that run wild long enough, they will utilize all your nutrition. To stay alive, the body will divert all its energy away from sex hormones into controlling inflammation and running yours, because cortisol is your primary anti-inflammatory, you see. Cortisol is your primary stress hormone. So whenever you got a bunch of inflammation in your body thinks you're running for your life or fighting for your life, and it suppresses sex hormone production. So what do we have today? We have all sorts of guys going to the gym and they can't figure out why they can't get big. I've had 19 and 20-year-old guys tell me 50 times, no matter what I do in the gym, I can't put on any muscle, right? I said, I'll tell you why. Because what you're doing at the supermarket and what you're doing at the fast food restaurant and what you're doing at the vending machine in college is killing anything you can do in the gym. But I take supplements. Oh yeah, show them to me, right? And what do you see on the bottle? A bottle full of synthesized crap. I got piles of research showing that stuff's more stressful on your body. It's like drugs. If it's synthesized, you better be bloody careful with the way you use it. So what happens? When you keep on inflaming the body, you go in from an itis into an osis. You know what an osis is? Hardening and degeneration. Osteoporosis. Okay? Spinal stenosis. Foraminal stenosis. Tendinosis. You get an osis, long rehab process if it can be done. When you burn out the biological energy systems, you go from an itis. An itis is an attempt to fix something. When you go into an osis, the body says, that's it, I give up. I'm out of energy, I'm out of nutrition, I'm out of trying. That's it. The best I can do is just freeze you. Okay? So you see fixed thoracic skeletons. You see joints that won't move. You see joints that aches. You go into what I call a farming term, a brownout. Right? A farmer. You mention brownout around a farmer and they get nervous. It's kind of like saying staph infection to a doctor. Oh, don't say that, right? Brownout, that's trouble. That's an osis. So what does a brownout look like? Well, you keep doing that to the soils. Remember, you get rid of the earthworms. What do you get rid of? You get rid of the birds. You get rid of the birds, you get rid of bird poop. We need diversity in animals because the diversity in the poop brings diversity of nutrition to the microorganisms, which brings diversity of nutrition to your plants, which brings diversity of nutrition to you. Right? So what do you see? Now we got birds landing on dead flowers going, well, what the hell am I going to eat here? So they're having to migrate until, if you read the book, The Future of Life by Edward O. Wilson, one of the most famous naturalists that ever lives, he says white man, or modern man has done more damage and killed more living species in the last 40 years than all man prior to him. Right? So in the last 40 years, we've killed more animal species with all this chemical crap than every single human being that ever existed on the planet, just in 40 years. So these are very realistic depictions. So when you go into a brownout, the surface of the earth basically starts dying. If you study what's going on in the mountains right now, almost all over the world, the tree line, the caps of the mountains that used to be covered in snow and used to have trees on them, they're receding. The hairline's receding. And the native Indians in many cultures say, we were warned that when the trees started to come down, it meant the end of our time was coming. Right? If you think I'm just standing here bullshitting you, then you better do your homework, because about 20 Native American cultures and other native cultures warned of all of this stuff if white man kept doing his little tricks. So what do you get when you go into a brownout? No matter what you do, I've had patients that were drinking 25 cups of coffee a day, and not one doctor ever even asked them about it. 25 cups of coffee a day, and guess what their primary complaint was? I'm tired all the time. That's because they're in the brownout stage. Once you go out of the inflammatory stage, you burn your adrenal glands, you can't produce energy anymore. Cortisol is a primary hormone. If you burn your adrenal glands out, it'll kill you, right? Probably 90% of the population has exhausted adrenals right now. You burn them out, you can die, right? So you don't want to mess with it. That's why the body immediately stops producing your sex hormones. It doesn't even want you to reproduce. What's one of the biggest businesses in medicine? In vitro fertilization. Why? For all the reasons I've told you. So what you get? Very tired, very sick people. What do you get? Here's one of my patients, a famous model. I can't tell you her name, but she's a famous model. She went to all sorts of doctors and therapists, terrible pain, anxiety attacks, visions, nightmares, you name it. Well, I talked to her for 15 minutes and I knew exactly what was going on. I said, you got a severe parasite infection. So I put her on parasite protocols. This woman shit 150 meters of worms. She shit a meter of worms a day for 150 days. She had a severe Ascaris infection, and every single doctor overlooked it. They said, oh, your symptoms are all in your head. These are all classic symptoms. This is why I say, a lot of these tests that people do to see, what's your level of this and your level of that, that stuff can all easily be regulated by parasites. You've got to ask yourself, are these changes in nutrient levels and hormone levels symptoms of a problem, or are they the problem? Right? That is a question that you can't answer unless you look at the body and all of its biological systems as a whole living system. You cannot isolate these systems. It might interest you to know that Hoffmann La Roche owns 90% of all the vitamins sold in the world. Hoffmann La Roche is one of the largest drug companies in the world, and they own 90% of all the vitamins. So the medical establishment now has taken over your vitamins as well. If you read the research of Royal Lee, he said, you know what? There's no such thing as an isolated vitamin in nature. In nature, there's only a vitamin complex, and every single plant or food substance contains carbohydrates, fats, proteins, enzymes, vitamins, minerals, and trace minerals, and they work in a complex, and it's so complicated that no scientist can break it apart. And those guys want to patent something so they can sell it to you, so they take the best they can. But Royal Lee says nutrition is like a watch. What part of a watch tells time? Well, the whole thing, right? So if you're chasing down isolated vitamin approaches without addressing the basics we've just discussed here, you're making big mistakes. And whenever you take isolated vitamins, your body has to scavenge all the other nutrients to put the complex back together. So what you typically see is one vitamin or nutrient works for a while, then it produces a new problem. And you think, oh, I fixed that, but now I've got this. And that keeps the whole vitamin industry running indefinitely because one thing just leads to another. So we're getting into the conclusion now, but I would conclude that smashing the watch is not a good idea. So has the modern medical system really helped us that far? Well, there's the doctor's approach. Check that out. I'm sorry, Mr. Jones, your HMO does not pay for enemas. I'm going to have to slap the shit out of you. Okay? So the modern model is symptom-oriented, focuses on isolated organ systems, focuses on germs and genetic causes, and they treat with pharmaceuticals and surgery. By the time you get pain, by the way, pain typically shows up in the fourth of 5 phases of diseases. You will not have to look far to find somebody who went to the doctor to get a checkup. They had a pain in their chest for the first time or something, and the doctor said, you're going to die within 3 to 6 months. Okay? You don't have to go any farther than right here. My wife's mother just died of cancer, and that's exactly what happened to her. She had a little lump in her throat, went to the doctor, 6 months later she was dead. 2 years earlier, her father had the same thing happen. Right? So I tell my wife, you don't have a good track record, you better be in the gym, you better eat good food, baby, or you're going to be gone. But the point being is, this is the real fact. Many people go to the doctor for a routine checkup, and within months they're dead. Why? Because symptoms are the 5th phase before you're dead. So you got inflammation, excretion, inflammation, deposition, impregnation. Symptoms show up here. The tissues degenerate. You got cancer. You're gone. Okay, so if you wait till you're in pain to do something, you made a major mistake. I borrowed this from Robert Rakowski. He makes the point better than anybody can. He said the drug companies have you hooked from cradle to grave. They've got you all scheduled out right in their business plan. They know exactly what kind of stuff you're going to have going on. They've got it all figured out beautifully, and they market to every category. What did Einstein say? Isolation equals specialization. You break the body up in pieces. That's not how it works. You can't fix it with that consciousness. So we might interest you to know what a specialist is. The definition of a specialist is someone who knows more and more about less and less until they know absolutely everything about nothing. Okay? So my concluding thoughts, thank you for sticking with me. I'm a little over time. I think the worst thing that will happen is I'll get chewed out, but I think that it's been important. So here's a typical Czech patient. And she had all these things: adrenal fatigue, hormonal imbalance, couldn't sleep well, depression, dehydration, constipation, toxicity, digestive trouble, thyroid trouble, bags of pills, tired of seeing doctors. That's what she looked like on paper. What do we have to do to get people like this healthy? Well, first thing we got to do is stop eating food from depleted soils. We got to start eating according to our racial and ethnic needs, not according to some ding-dong's diet book. We got to stop being afraid of fat, but just remember, you can't get good fat from poisoned plants and animals. So you want good fat, you got to go after good food. That means you got to support organic farming. And by the way, they're ruining the standards on organic farming too. So you better find a farmer that you can get to know and watch them carefully. You got to stop eating crap: carbohydrate, refined foods, additives, and preservatives. Crap. Okay? And we got to drink more water. Most Americans, most people in all industrialized nations are dehydrated. Robert Rakowski says it best: the best solution for pollution is dilution. Right? I travel all over the world. Sometimes I can't get organic food, but I'll tell you what, I make damn sure I drink plenty of water, and I go out of my way to find good water, and that's getting to be tough too. Okay? Don't skip meals. As soon as you start dieting and skipping meals, you start training your hormonal system to go into a crisis state, and that's stressful. And most people are already stressed out and wound out. So stress plus stress only equals stress. Remember, stress equals catabolic. Catabolic plus catabolic equals death. Okay? We keep looking for a magic pill. There is no magic pill. There's only taking responsibility for yourself. Okay? Drugs cover the symptoms and they don't treat the underlying cause. So you need to stay away from those unless it's just a last-ditch effort. I already told you about that. Be very careful with vitamins. Many of them are toxic to the body. I only recommend and use whole food vitamin supplementation in my practice. The only time I ever let anyone use a synthetic vitamin is if it's prescribed by someone that knows exactly what they're doing. And I have special doctors that I refer to. People like Robert Rakowski or Dan Kalish or Cliff Oliver, the doctor that runs my nutrition and lifestyle coach program. Sometimes people's metabolic systems need a kick. They need a push, but you really need to know what you're doing. Otherwise, you're just playing Russian roulette with people. You might as well just give them another drug and tell them to get their finances in order. Okay? Human bodies are not linear systems. They're harmonic systems. And research shows that no pool player has ever been able to do the same thing twice with the pool balls. Did you know that? Not even the best players in the world, not Minnesota Fats, no one has ever been able to, as filmed on high-speed video, make those 15 some odd balls do the same thing twice. But you have 100 trillion cells in the average human body. Each one of those is like a ball. Every one of you is radically different. You're as different on the inside as you are on the outside, but almost all drug protocols treat the human body as though it was a linear system. And it might interest you to know that all drug protocols are developed using software that approximates your physiology. Try that one on. Try that one on. Remember, energy is information. The only thing that's on these tapes is electromagnetic pulses. Everything in this whole room, everything in the universe is energy. Food is energy. Whenever you eat something, you're telling your body something. When you eat sugar, you're telling it, hurry up, hurry up. When your insulin levels rise up, you're saying, store fat, store energy, store energy. When your glucagon levels go up, it says, spend some fat, spend some fat. When your testosterone levels rise up, it says, kill something or screw something. Right? That's what testosterone says. Okay? If you don't believe me, I'll inject you and we'll find out. So what do you get? Every food produces a vibrational resonance. When you eat food that's not designed for the human body, it confuses all your cells, and entropy or disorder pushes you towards death. Decay and disorder. If you want to end up in a compost pile, keep eating the kind of stuff that's not designed for the human body because it screws up all your biological systems. And remember, energy is information. Okay? Now, I would like to prove to you, this is one of my favorite slides in the whole world, I would like to prove to you that the United States government knows exactly how to take care of the microorganisms in the soil. That they know exactly what they're doing to the soil, and that they know exactly what they're doing to you. Have a look at this plaque from a state park on my vacation in Flagstaff, Arizona. These posters were all over the park. United States Forest Service. At first glance, the desert topsoil looks like an old dry crust. Take a closer look. It's alive. That lumpy black crust is actually a living web of bacteria, moss, lichen, fungus, and liverworts. Microbiotic crust controls erosion, stores water, fertilizes soil, and provides seed beds for all the plants from wildflowers to trees. Don't bust the crust. Stay on the trail. One footprint can crush a decade's worth of work. Isn't that interesting? And what do you see wherever organic farmers and gardeners are? Carefully laid out paths so you do not walk on the soil because you kill the microorganisms, and that's why almost all the top organic farmers and biodynamic farmers have minimal tractor use, and as a matter of fact, a lot of them still use oxens and animals because the footprint is so small of an ox or a cow that it doesn't disrupt the microorganism populations nearly as much, right? As a matter of fact, research that you can read in the Journal of the Ecologist shows that as much as 25% of the greenhouse effect comes directly from commercial farming alone, from running all the farm equipment. The average tomato in the supermarket today travels 1,500 miles by plane, truck, or boat before it gets to your mouth. We're using tremendous amount of fossil fuels. Why? Because the people that sell the fossil fuels are making tons of money off the system too. Okay? So the government knows exactly what's in topsoil, but you see, they're not worried about your gut or your nervous system or your health or your kids. They just want to make sure the park looks good. How's that for interesting stuff? So here's an interesting quote by Herbert Koff, PhD. The final measure of nutritional quality lies in the organism which consumes the food. Nutrition quality is an aspect of the produce in itself. Nutrition quality is not an aspect of the produce in itself, but is determined by the value of the produce for the consumer's physical and spiritual health and growth capabilities. That says it all. You take that statement and lay it over top of the health of the average North American, and you got your report card for medicine, right? We have to look at how the body works. The soil is the foundation for the plants. The plants and the animals eat the plants, and we eat animals and plants. The health of the plants and the animals that we eat produces our biochemical foundation. That produces our hormonal stability. That produces our nutrition. It basically allows our biological systems to function. Your biochemical health determines your physical health and your emotional, mental, and spiritual health. So biochemical, physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual all depend on plants, animals, and soil. So look at all the psychotropic drugs. Research in 1988 showed that 53% of Americans were schizophrenic. 53%. How's that for a shocker? Okay? So here's a little cartoon I made up. You can't outsmart Mother Nature. You see the centipede and the beetle are walking along, and the beetle trips over a branch and falls, and he says to the centipede, he says, geez, how the hell do you walk and coordinate so damn many legs? And the centipede starts thinking about it, and he tripped and fell. And he says to the beetle, geez, I wish you hadn't asked me that. I never had a problem until you started making me think about it. Right? So the true, some things in nature are best left alone. The moral of the story is we shouldn't be trying to fix what already works really well. We don't need pesticides, herbicides, and fungicides, and drugs and toxins. We don't need cavities in our heads, and we don't need to support people that are making tons of money keeping us sick, because the disease industry is that, a disease industry. If you want to be healthy, you got to take responsibility for yourself, just like that beetle has to take responsibility for his own legs. And remember, Mother Nature will always balance herself out. Okay? Right? And what do you see? You see monsoons, you see hurricanes, you see earthquakes. I'm telling you, she's our mother. You can only mess with mama so long, you get a swat in the head. You watch how a mother bear handles her cubs. Mother Earth is no different. You want to keep pissing in the wrong hole, you're going to get it back. It might be called a monsoon instead of squirrel urine, though. So, which one are you? That's what you got to ask yourself. People always say to me, "Oh, organic food's so expensive." Yeah, so is $400 a month on vitamins, on super bars and this and that. I tell my patients, don't ask me what you should take. Ask me what you should take away. Look at your diet. If you can't pronounce on the word on the label, quit eating it. Well, we pride ourselves on being this big, powerful military superpower, and the eagle is our symbol, the bird of, prey, the master of the skies. Well, pictures like this one are getting to be real common these days. If you can't see it back there, that's a dead eagle laying on the ground surrounded by garbage and crap that people have left, probably in some park area. Remember, life eats life. There's just no question about it. You want to see my patient 1 year after she followed my one-page prescription that I just basically gave you, by the way? There she is. It was 1 year doing nothing but what's in those 2 programs right there. That's it. No more. No fancy pills, no fancy powders, nothing but carefully scheduled exercise, getting to bed on time, drinking the right amount of water, and switching to organic food and getting rid of some stinking thinking. Right? As above, so below. Thank you for sticking with me. I'm happy to answer questions if you want to ask questions.
Are all organic foods the same? Big supermarkets, small farmers?
Okay, the question is, are all organic foods the same? No, they are not. The large commercial companies are doing their very best to erode organic standards to the point that they mean nothing. Only about 4 years ago, I had my researchers find out how many organic certification bodies there were. There were only 5 or 6 of them. The gold standard of organic certification worldwide is the Demeter Association. So if you just go to the website, go to Google and type in Demeter Association, that's the association that's used by the biodynamic farmers, which has been scientifically proven to be the most nutritious food in the world. So that's the gold standard. If you want to compare any organic certification, compare it to the Demeter Association. But let me tell you what's happened. In just the last 4 or 5 years, first let me tell you what it takes to be certified by a real organic agency. You got to farm organically by the principles of organic farming, and your farm has to be investigated by a board member from the board. So they come to your farm, they investigate, they usually give you a report and say, these are the things you got to do, clean up your farm, farm organically, and then before they give you your license, you get reinvestigated. Okay? So give you your certificate. So they actually test the soil, etc. They want you to have 3 years. Some of them have dropped it to 2 years now. It used to be 3 years because in the process of the microorganisms building up their populations in the soil, they actually eat up and metabolize all the old chemicals in the soil. And when the animals, the insects and the organisms eat those chemicals, they convert them into chemicals that are even more toxic than some of the chemicals that were on the ground. So in that 2 to 3 year period, the food can be at risk. Okay? So you can say that you farm organically in that grace period, but you cannot say that you're certified. It usually costs $5,000 a year or more to maintain your certification. Many farmers can't afford that. The reason that costs that much money is there's a lot of administrative work, and if you have problems on your farm, the board will actually come support you and help you to find non-toxic means. So basically you've got a board of highly skilled farmers that oversee all the farms that they certify to keep them organic, because if you get quarantined, you lose your certification, and that means it's hard for you to sell your food as organic. You can't, right? They have to quarantine your farm. So those are the hallmarks of a real organic certification. Now, just in the last few years, about the last 4 years, we've gone from 5 organic certifications to 95. Most of them require nothing except that you pay a fee and they send you your organic certification in the mail. And if you track the money back, almost all the organic certifications now are owned by major food processing companies like Nabisco, General Mills, etc., right? And by the way, they're the same people that fund the nutrition programs in almost all major universities, and they teach the nutritionists to prescribe crap. Why do you think our food pyramid's backwards, right? So what's happened is they've been for several years, but now they're making a much more aggressive effort because there's so much interest in organic foods now, they have to fight back. So what they're doing is they're running studies on organic food in universities all over the world, but the organic food is being brought in from one of their bogus organically certified farms, and then they run scientific studies in major universities and publish a paper, and look, there's no difference between commercial and organic. So you get all sorts of people. I get them in my office all the time. Well, I saw a report on the news that said there was no difference. Well, that's right, because this is why. And that's their plan. And they're smart, and they don't want to farm for real because it takes energy and effort and intelligence. You can't farm in an airplane or going 60 miles an hour down the freeway in a truck. You actually have to do it. And the sad part of it is we're losing farmers at a massive rate every day in North America right now because all these commercial farmers are putting them out of business. And it might also interest you guys to know that most of the banks that lend money to farmers so they can buy their equipment is owned by the 5 major food companies. So what they want to do is they push them out and they foreclose and they take all their property back. They take their property, they take their equipment. So they own, and you see the food companies own everything. They own the railway lines, the transportation lines. It's a big, huge network, okay? And we're healthcare people. We're into high performance. We're the goaltenders, ladies and gentlemen. The doctors have been, 60% of a medical doctor's education is paid for by drug companies. They have no financial investment, the drug companies, in letting doctors teach health. As a matter of fact, if you're a medical doctor and you get too much into this kind of stuff, they'll take your license away. It's happened many times, okay? So they've set it up so you can't practice real medicine. You can only sell drugs, and the drug companies run the whole thing. So if you want to be healthy, you've got to take ownership of yourself, and that means you've got to do the work. If you have to fly food in, fly it in. If you've got to get frozen turkeys from Alabama or whatever, do it. Sell your damn car and eat it. I'm dead serious, because you can be like my patient. You can drive all over town in a Ferrari and have a miserable life, a pocket full of drugs, and a family that's extremely disjointed, and kids that are in drug programs. I see it every day. Most of my work these days is mental, emotional, and spiritual work to deal with people that are literally cracking up. They're rich, and they're sick and unhappy.
First of all, I believe in everything you're saying, but to be honest, I don't think they're realistic. Let's say a family's low social economic status, lots of barriers, how are they going to afford organic food? How can they go to get a membership program? How can they work out? Or all they want to do is survive.
Right. So there's a number of things, and I address that in my book, How to Eat, Move, and Be Healthy, and I have a chart in there, and I show you the order to go in based on your financial ability, and I am working on a book called How to Eat, Move, and Be Healthy on a Low Budget. So the first thing you do, 1, is just drink more water. 2, stop buying crap. Most of the people that you're describing, if you were to analyze their grocery bills like I have and to look in their shopping cart, you saw that shopping cart? It's full of not only crap, but expensive crap, okay? So if they got rid of all the Pop-Tarts and the Fruit Loops and the shit and started spending that, even if they were buying commercially raised produce, their health would rise up dramatically, right? I've got books. A guy wrote a book in the UK, How to Feed a Family, I believe, of 5 on 16 pounds a week. And the guy shows you how to do it. I've got lots of books in my library. If you make stews, you know, believe me, you can do it.
I just got another spin-off, not really a spin-off, but one thing I don't understand, like, we all know omega-3s are good, right?
What?
Omega-3 fatty acids are very healthy for you.
Well, in the right dose. I mean, anything can poison you.
I agree there, but I've never seen a commercial about it. That's what, no one's answered that question, I think.
Well, I can answer that for you. You won't see a commercial about anything that makes you healthy because nobody makes any money when you're healthy.
But why don't we do something about it? Like, we keep talking about it, but why don't we start something?
I'm here, baby. I brought 180 pounds of twisted steel and sex appeal. I'm doing my best. Yes. All right, I'll come over there next.
My wife and I own an organic grocery store in Sudbury, Ontario.
Yeah, there you go, see? Yeah, baby.
And to be honest with you, I own like a training company of trained hockey players up there too, and we haven't made a dime in 2 years. It is flat as piston and plate. It's never made a dime. And we created a program called the Food Shed Program, where we cut down costs in order of shipping, and we tried to get local farmers to produce organic food.
Yeah.
And what you're doing here is right on the mark, man. We need to get money behind you and get you out there.
Yeah, that's why I made these CDs. That's 9 hours beyond what's in the book. And that tells you what's going on with food. Just 9 hours of what I just did. And anytime my practitioners can't get people to start eating organic food, they let them listen to that, and 98% of them flip. Because when they understand what they're doing to themselves, I probably have a stack of letters that tall from all over the world of parents that had kids on ADD medication, people that had all sorts of problems, skin tags, skin problems, cirrhosis, you name it. They followed my advice and did nothing but eat proper food, and diseases cleared up, drugs gone, whole life. So the answer is, the reason you're having the problem is because there's just a lack of education. But guys like me, you'll read about me in the obituaries when I get good at this, because I'll be a problem. And there's plenty of guys like me. Go to quackwatch.com, and I'm already on Quackwatch, which is a list that they put up to identify quacks for the public, right? And almost every doctor on the Quackwatch, you will blow your mind. You read the list of doctors on the Quack. It's almost every doctor that ever did anything for humanity. It's the best doctors in the world right there, right? And it's the AMA doing that to protect the public. Okay, I got to go over here. I'll come back to you.
You talked about bottled water and some being better than others. How do you know which is good, which is not good? You don't want to be drinking.
Okay, rule number one, if you can drink out of glass, drink out of glass. Okay, whenever I can, I drink out of glass. But when I travel in airports and stuff, sometimes they get wigged out because they think you might hit someone with the bottle. Rule number two, if you can afford to, always buy the water that sells the fastest. Evian is the fastest selling water in most places in the world. In London, if you don't get to the store before 3 o'clock in the afternoon, you will not find Evian water anywhere. Okay? The reason is the longer water sits in plastic, the more xenoestrogens it absorbs from the plastics, and that gives you a hormonal imbalance. It causes an estrogenic imbalance, exactly like plant pesticides do. Okay? The other thing is, the higher brands of water that move quicker, they don't sit a lot of times. I've actually got pictures from France, believe it or not, behind a supermarket, and they've got pallets of water, enough to fill this whole room, sitting outside in the sunlight in the middle of summer. So all day long, the sun's beaming right through the plastic into the water. That estrogenizes the hell out of the water. So there's a number of factors involved, but the rule is drink the water that sells the fastest. If you're not sure, and you're in another country like I am, and I can't speak the language, I work in Russia all over the place, I just get somebody to say which is the most popular water bought by the locals, right? And that's usually the safest way to go. The next thing is, a good water should always have a total dissolved solids of 300 or more. Research by Martin Fox showed he studied the water supplies in every major city in the U.S. and correlated the amount of hardness, the hardness factor in the water, so calcium and magnesium, and the rates of cancer in those cities. And he found there was a direct correlation between how soft the water is and how much cancer there is. What that means, soft water, the softest water there is distilled. That's completely demineralized. He showed that the softer the water, the more cancer there was, and in the cities that had the hardest water, they had the least cancer. Why? Because minerals are chelating agents. So when you have minerals in the water, it pulls heavy metals and toxins out of your body. You get covalent bonding and various bonding effects from the minerals, and you urinate the poisons out of your body. But if you use a naked water, it sucks everything out of your body. So distilled water has to be used very carefully and only for therapeutic purposes And I have friends that are biological dentists, and they've noticed very consistently high rates of fractured teeth in people that drink a lot of distilled water. Why? Because it's demineralizing the body. It's so naked, it sucks everything out. Okay, so those are the tips, but in my book, How to Eat, Move, and Be Healthy, there's a whole list of water drinking tips. Okay.
What's your take on flu vaccine? Flu vaccine.
I wouldn't recommend vaccination. That's my personal opinion. I would encourage you to use your own mind. But if you want to know more about that, one of the top people in the world on that subject is a friend of mine. Her name is Dr. Sherry Tenpenny. She's a medical doctor. They'll probably be putting her in jail any day now. She's got videotapes, which I highly recommend you watch. She's an expert on the topic. She's been an emergency room physician. She's run entire hospitals. She's the real deal. You can find her on Mercola.com, MERCOLA.com. Her name's Dr. Sherry Tenpenny, all one word, TENPNNY, MD. She's a DO, actually. And she has tons of excellent information that'll answer all your questions on that. Question? Okay. I'll come back to you. I'll work my way around. I'm not going to forget you, though. I got enough, and don't panic. I'm all organic.
I was just wondering, what do you cook? You said you know what microwave. What do you use?
I just use a stove, but I would never use a microwave. Microwaves damage the food tremendously. There's lots of great research out there. Some of it's presented in my book, How to Eat, Move, and Be Healthy. Some of it's on my audio CD series. There's a book by a lady right here in Toronto called Electromagnetic Pollution. It gives you a ton of information on microwaves, but I just cook naturally. Slow down, baby. Don't be in a hurry, because eating that fast food is a fast way to kill yourself.
What do you do if you have well water and you want to drink it and you want to do reverse osmosis?
Okay, good question. What do you do if you have well water? Okay, a couple of very important things about well water. Number one, have it tested. Just have it tested to see if it's been poisoned. Where do you live?
Kingsley, Ontario.
Do you live near any commercial farms or any industries?
No.
Okay, good. You're probably all right. But Ultralife, there's a company called Ultralife, and you can get water testing done quite easily if you just check into it. You could just go on the internet. But Ultralife in Chicago is a company that will do good water testing for you. If your well water tests out good, then just drink it. I wouldn't use a reverse osmosis filter because it takes too much out of the water.
Ultraviolet?
Ultralife. Oh, ultraviolet. Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. There's, but here, I'm going to tell you something that most people don't know. When you drink water out of the ground like we're supposed to, in the water is a homeopathic dose of all the bacteria, all the viruses, and all the fungal organisms in that whole region. Right? So you're training your immune system to know how to attack everything that's in that water. So overly processed, like if you use a Japanese microwater machine or a real good reverse osmosis machine, some of these things will filter even viruses. At a Japanese microwater machine will go down to something like 1 micron. The AIDS virus, I believe, is only like 4 microns in diameter. So some of these super water filters pull everything out of the water, which means your immune system does not get any environmental training. We're designed to drink out of creeks and out of nature, and that was giving our immune system homeopathic doses of the environment. You probably have the best thing going. Just find out if there's any runoff, because what happens is commercial farming, all the urine and all the feces leaks into the topsoil, and it can move in underground water streams. You can get, if there's gas stations, if there's any kind of dumps, you need to just check the area for at least a 50-mile radius and see if there's any commercial corporations producing toxins. But the simple thing to do is get your water tested. If your water test clean, Ultralife. I don't know if it's ultralife.com, but you'll find them. They're in Chicago. There, my wife's giving you the answer there. You're lucky. You probably got good water. Yes.
I'm a practicing dentist, and I noticed you have a lot of material on it, so I'm just wondering your opinion on amalgam holdings versus composite.
I would never let anyone put a mercury amalgam filling in my mouth. I have tons of research on that. Weston Price did huge amounts of research on that and on root canals. And the American Dental Association buried the research, and it recently surfaced about 10 years ago. You can get that from the Price Pottinger Foundation, and that's where the studies I quoted were in. It's extremely toxic, and there are some 150 amalgams that you can put in your mouth, and a good dentist these days, like a biological dentist, the ones I refer patients to, do blood tests on you, and they test you to see which ones your immune system does not react negatively to, because many people have allergic reaction to amalgams. Okay, so his name is Hal Huggins. The Hal Huggins Association is, I look for their dentists.
Because the alternative composite, everybody wants all their silver fillings taken out and want composite fillings put in, but I don't believe that stands for either.
Well, it's very stressful to take them out. I've known many people to get very sick trying to get healthy, so I tell people never have mercury amalgam fillings removed until you're quite healthy. And the way I know they're healthy is I do all these tests on them, I measure cortisol rhythm, I got all sorts of ways of knowing. But I don't think people should extract any of the toxins out of their body until they're healthy enough, because here's what most people don't realize. Your body's constantly trying to detoxify itself. I think going on fast is a very dangerous thing. What I tell people to do is eat good food, rest enough, drink enough water, exercise the right amount, and your body will automatically begin cleaning house as soon as it has the nutrition and energy on board. And I actually have to warn my patients. I use organic whole food vitamins, and if you